Humble, single mother takes twins to work but never expected them to hug the millionaire CEO. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel and let's get started. The sun had barely risen when Julia slipped out of her tiny bedroom, careful not to wake her sleeping twins. She tiptoed across the creaking floorboards and into the cramped kitchen, where a battered coffee maker struggled to brew the only thing that would keep her awake through another relentless day. She glanced at the clock. 5:30 a.m. The house was silent except for the faint buzz of the fridge and the hum of her anxious thoughts. Outside, the world was slowly stirring. A delivery truck rattled past the window and the scent of fresh bread from the bakery across the street drifted in, reminding Julia that despite her exhaustion, life marched on. Only an hour left before she had to wake up Carmen and Carlos, her 5-year-old twins, and prepare them for a long day she couldn't afford to postpone. Julia's mind raced as she sipped her coffee, the steam fogging her already tired eyes. She had taken on an extra shift last week at the local cleaning company. Yet again, the pay wasn't enough to keep pace with the rent hikes, groceries, and the daycare she could barely manage. But she had no choice. Struggling with overdue bills was a daily battle she'd grown used to, even if it wore her down. If only she had more help. If only she didn't have to do it all alone. A single mother at 28, Julia's life had changed overnight 5 years ago when her husband, Victor, announced he wasn't ready for the responsibility of fatherhood. He vanished, leaving her with 2 infant twins, a handful of baby supplies, and a battered old car that broke down more times than it started. Since then, she had learned that tears didn't pay the rent, and heartbreak didn't fill the refrigerator. Strength was her only option. She set the coffee mug in the sink and ran her hands through her hair, summoning courage for the day's challenges. Today, she was scheduled to clean the top floors of the majestic tower, the shimmering high-rise owned by none other than Bruce Montgomery, a man rumored to be worth billions. Julia had never met him, nor did she expect to. Her job was to mop marble floors, polish glass walls, and avoid any trouble. Knock, knock. Julia nearly jumped out of her skin. No one visited at this hour. Setting her half-finished cup aside, she went to the door. A neighbor from 2 floors down, an older woman named Belinda, stood there with an apologetic smile. "Julia, dear, I'm so sorry to do this," Belinda began in a shaky voice. "They just changed my schedule at the diner. I have to leave early. I was supposed to watch Carmen and Carlos for you, but—" Julia's heart sank. "But you can't." Belinda's wrinkled hands trembled. "I really can't. They need me at the diner right away. I'm so sorry. I'll make it up to you." Julia forced a grateful smile. "Thank you for letting me know." She closed the door, her chest tightening. This was the 3rd time in a month her childcare plan had fallen through. With no relatives nearby and no money for a backup babysitter, she was out of options. A swirl of panic rose in her stomach. There was no time to call around. Everyone she knew was just as busy and just as broke. In less than an hour, she needed to be on the bus to the majestic tower. Missing today's shift wasn't an option. Missing a shift meant losing the job, and losing the job meant falling further behind on rent. She swallowed the knot in her throat. She would have to bring the twins with her, at least for a few hours, until maybe she figured out something else. She glanced over at the small sofa where Carmen and Carlos slept, entwined beneath a single old blanket. 2 angelic faces, peaceful in dreams. Would it be so terrible to let them come to work just this once? They could quietly stay in the break room while she cleaned. Julia remembered warnings from her supervisor. No visitors, no kids. But what choice did she have? "Mommy?" Carlos's groggy voice startled her. He rubbed his eyes, hair sticking up in every direction. Carmen stirred beside him, blinking slowly as she took in her mother's worried expression. Julia knelt beside them and brushed away the tangle of hair from Carlos's forehead. "Listen, babies," she said gently. we're going on an adventure today. You'll come with me to work, but you have to be on your best behavior. No running, no loud noises, and please—" Her voice trembled with desperation. "Promise me you'll be good." Carmen, the slightly braver of the two, nodded. "We can help," she offered, eyes shining with innocence. "We can clean, too." Julia smiled despite herself. "We'll see," she murmured, though she knew what she was about to do was risky. But life had taught her that the impossible became possible when you had no other path. Within half an hour, the twins were dressed in mismatched clothes, hand-me-downs from the charity shop. Julia had combed Carmen's curls into neat little pigtails. Carlos wore an old cap that once belonged to her brother back when they were kids. It was far from perfect, but it was what she could manage on a tight budget. The city bus rumbled to a stop outside their building. Julia hurried the twins on board, ignoring the stares from a few passengers who likely disapproved of children out so early, or the fact that she looked exhausted and out of place. She paid the fare with trembling hands, silently hoping that a single missed coin wouldn't make her short on lunch money. They arrived at the majestic tower 20 minutes later. The building soared into the sky, an elegant fortress of glass and steel that dwarfed everything around it. Carmen and Carlos craned their necks, eyes wide in childlike wonder. The grand lobby was bustling with employees, visitors, and suited executives. Soft music played overhead. The floor gleamed like a polished mirror. A security guard sat at a sleek marble desk, greeting arrivals. He eyed Julia and the twins with a suspicious squint. Julia's heart thudded. She mumbled a polite greeting, trying to appear calm as she strode past the guard. She breathed a sigh of relief when he merely nodded and returned to his laptop. Maybe she had worried for nothing. If she could keep the kids hidden in the janitorial area, no one important would see them, and she could sneak them out before the day was over. She took the service elevator to the 16th floor where the cleaning department was stationed. The hallway smelled of lemon disinfectant. Buckets, mops, and other supplies lined the walls. Two other cleaners, older women in matching uniforms, shot her sympathetic glances. Everyone knew her situation, and many faced similar hardships. "Julia," whispered one with a knowing nod toward the twins. "Careful, Mr. Henderson is doing his rounds. He'll report you if he sees the children." Julia's stomach flipped. "I'll keep them in the break room," she promised, leading Carmen and Carlos into a cramped space with a few chairs and an old vending machine. "Stay here," she told them, voice firm but gentle. "Don't touch anything. Don't wander off." She handed them a small bag of crackers each, her only snack for the day. The twins nodded obediently. From the corner of her eye, she saw them sit side by side, huddling together, tiny feet swinging nervously. Julia grabbed her mop and bucket, stepping out to start her shift. Just as she did, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She frowned, fishing it out with damp hands. The number was unknown. "Hello?" she whispered, worried it might be the building supervisor calling to fire her on the spot. No answer, just a faint crackling. Then came a voice cold and impatient. "Ms. Reyes, is it? You need to come to the top floor immediately. There's an urgent matter to attend to." Julia's heart pounded. "Who is this?" "You'll know soon enough," the voice snapped. "And bring the cleaning supplies. The CEO's private office is in need of your services." The line went dead. In need of her services. Why? The CEO rarely stayed in the building at this hour, and certainly not on a day the rest of the staff was bustling around. She peered back into the break room. Carmen and Carlos were nibbling on crackers, looking around curiously. If she left them alone, they'd be safe, right? But something in her gut warned her. Nothing about this day was going as planned. She exhaled, steeling herself. The top floor was rumored to have been designed like a lavish penthouse, complete with an extravagant office that boasted panoramic city views and furniture worth more than her entire year's salary. She only hoped the rumored billionaire, Mr. Bruce Montgomery, wasn't the one behind that call. Or if he was, She hoped he was too busy to notice a humble single mom struggling to keep it all together. Yet fate, she was about to discover, had arranged a very different scenario. For on that top floor, a twist awaited her, one that would change her life and the lives of her children in a way she never expected. Julia stepped into the private elevator with her cleaning cart, pulse still racing from the cryptic phone call. The overhead lights hummed, and she stared at the polished stainless steel walls. She felt impossibly small in that confined space, an echo of how she often felt in life, overshadowed by burdens and uncertain futures. But she had no choice. She needed this job. As the elevator rose, each numbered floor glowed on the digital panel, 17, 18, 19. The top level was officially the 20th floor, but rumor had it there was a secret mezzanine above that, the CEO's personal suite. She fiddled with the rubber gloves in her pocket, forcing her breath to steady. Ding. The doors slid open to reveal a serene reception area unlike any she'd ever seen. Thick, cream-colored carpet muffled her footsteps as she pushed the cleaning cart past a curved desk that seemed sculpted from glass. No one was there to greet her. The entire space felt strangely still, as though waiting for an audience to arrive. Sunlight streamed through a floor-to-ceiling window at the far end, lighting up a corridor that led deeper inside. Julia hesitated, heart hammering. Should she knock on a door? Call out? She didn't even know who had summoned her. She only knew the voice demanded her presence. Footsteps approached from behind. Julia tensed, turning to face a tall man in a crisp gray suit. Deep-set eyes measured her in a single, cool glance. She recognized him. Mr. Henderson, the building supervisor. He was known for his strict demeanor and unwavering loyalty to the corporate higher-ups. "You took your time," Henderson remarked, crossing his arms. "The CEO's office is in disarray, and he wants it spotless for an important meeting." He waved his hand dismissively at her cart. "Get to it. Top of the corridor, left door." Julia nodded, anxious to avoid any confrontation. "Yes, sir." She moved past him, feeling his gaze linger over her shoulder as she proceeded. The last thing she wanted was for Henderson to suspect she'd brought her children inside. Or worse, catch them somewhere they weren't allowed. At the end of the corridor, she found the massive double doors, each carved with intricate geometric patterns. She pressed a small button on the panel and the doors slid open silently, revealing an office so large it could have fit her entire apartment inside. The decor was minimal and modern, every piece of furniture an expensive statement. A plush white couch, a gleaming black desk. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a stunning view of the city skyline, the roads below like ribbons weaving among concrete towers. Her heart lurched when she saw the chaos that disarray had implied. Papers strewn across the floor, bits of crumpled documents, and even a shattered vase near the entrance. Water spread in a puddle on the polished floor. The faint, sweet scent of lilies lingered. Julia frowned. Whoever had called her must have left in a hurry or thrown a fit. Was it Mr. Montgomery himself? She found it hard to believe a billionaire CEO would allow such a mess, yet here she was, faced with undeniable proof. The door slid shut behind her with a soft click, making her jump. She set her cart aside and started tidying up. First, she gathered the scattered papers, stacking them into a neat pile on the edge of the desk. Most were typed reports with lines of financial data, though she caught glimpses of bold headings. Merger, acquisition, liability. The corporate language meant little to her, but it hinted at a high-stakes meeting that had ended abruptly. She then turned to the broken vase, carefully collecting the shards. They were delicate, probably expensive porcelain. She sighed at the waste. In her world, a pretty decoration like that would be a treasured heirloom, yet here it was just another fixture, easily smashed and replaced. She found a small plastic bag in her cleaning cart to store the fragments, making sure to keep the area safe for anyone who might walk barefoot. All the while, a nagging thought plagued her. Carmen and Carlos. Were they all right? The break room was musty and cramped, and she hated the idea of them being frightened or bored. She considered calling one of the other cleaners to check on them, but no one had signaled her phone yet. Perhaps everything was fine, and maybe if she worked fast, she could return to them soon. A low beep startled her. She glanced up. A panel on the wall flashed with a digital message. "Conference call in 5 minutes." Julia realized it must be a computerized schedule or security system. Panicked, she quickened her pace. If the CEO was returning for a conference call, she needed to vanish before he arrived. She hastily mopped up the puddle from the shattered vase. As she wrung the mop out, the double doors whispered open again. Julia looked up, expecting to see Henderson or an assistant. Instead, she found herself staring at a man she recognized from photographs in the building's lobby. Bruce Montgomery, the reclusive CEO. Tall, with a sharp suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, he had an air of subdued power. His dark hair was neatly combed, and he wore a watch that gleamed with understated elegance. In that moment, Julia felt the full weight of her difference in status. Her uniform was rumpled, and the tips of her shoes were damp from the mop water. Mr. Montgomery didn't speak at first. His gaze moved from the scattered papers to her cleaning cart, then settled on her face. She stood still, heart pounding so loudly she was sure he could hear it. Another beep from the panel cut the silence, reminding them both of the call scheduled soon. Finally, he spoke, voice low and controlled. "Thank you for cleaning up the mess." He walked closer, footsteps echoing on the polished floor. "I didn't realize they'd send someone so quickly." Julia managed a nod. "I was already on site, sir. The supervisor told me to come." He studied her for a moment as though trying to place her in a larger puzzle. "I see." Her nerves bristled. She'd expected an outburst, some arrogant scolding from a millionaire unaccustomed to seeing a cleaning lady in his personal sanctuary. But instead she saw a flicker of weariness behind those composed features, as if he had more pressing worries than an office in shambles. "I'll be gone in a minute," she said quickly, gathering the mop and supplies. "I just have to—" He raised a hand gently, cutting her off. "There's no rush. I caused this chaos myself." A tight smile ghosted across his lips. "I'm afraid I lost my temper after a difficult phone call. Someone informed me I'd lost a major account. Turned out to be an orchestrated betrayal." Julia swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. CEO drama was far above her pay grade. "I'm sorry, sir." Mr. Montgomery exhaled. "Don't be. You're just doing your job." He glanced at the screen on the wall. "And apparently, so must I. I have a conference call to salvage what's left of this deal." Before she could answer, a new beep sounded. 30 seconds until the call. He moved behind his desk and pressed a button. A holographic display lit up with lines of data swirling. He regarded her briefly. "You can finish cleaning afterward. For now, stay quiet in the corner if you must remain. I've no time to dismiss you properly." Awkwardly, Julia retreated to a far corner of the office, her eyes lowered. She felt out of place in the presence of corporate negotiations worth millions or billions of dollars. But she had no exit plan that wouldn't disrupt him further, so she stood there trying to blend into the wall. Mr. Montgomery touched a control panel on his desk. Instantly, voices crackled through hidden speakers. She caught snippets of conversation, something about share percentages, legal ramifications, pending lawsuits. It was a vortex of high-stakes vocabulary that made her head spin. She watched him handle it with remarkable composure, delivering quick retorts and thorough questions. Despite the tension, he seemed gifted at negotiation, a calm, commanding presence that made others yield. Yet there was also a strain in his eyes, a heaviness that suggested mounting pressure. Julia couldn't help but think of the mountains in her own life. Unpaid rent, raising 2 children alone, the lonely nights wrestling with exhaustion. Different worlds, but the same weight of responsibility in the quiet recesses of one's gaze. 20 minutes later, the call ended. Mr. Montgomery removed his earpiece with a frustrated sigh. Silence followed. Julia froze, unsure if she was supposed to speak or vanish. Finally, he stood, straightening his suit jacket. "I suppose you heard some of that," he muttered. "Well, let the rumor mill churn. It won't matter soon enough." Julia didn't know if he was speaking to her or simply voicing his thoughts out loud, but then he lifted his eyes, focusing on her again. "You look tired," he said, surprising her. There was no malice in his tone, only curiosity. "Long day?" She hesitated. "Yes, sir." A flicker of empathy crossed his features. "Thank you for dealing with this fiasco." He checked his watch. "We'll talk more in a moment. For now, I need to step out." With that, Bruce Montgomery swept from the room, leaving the doors open behind him. Julia exhaled, releasing a breath she didn't realize she'd held. Her heart drummed an erratic beat. Talk more in a moment? Why would he want to speak to her at all? She reminded herself that she needed to get back to Carmen and Carlos. But curiosity flickered. Perhaps a short conversation with the CEO might open a tiny door of opportunity, a new position or a slight wage increase. Still, it felt absurd to hope for such things. She cleaned the last trace of water and picked up her supplies, preparing to leave. That was when her phone vibrated in her pocket. She glanced at the screen, an emergency text from one of the other cleaners. Julia's blood turned cold. It read, "Your kids left the break room. I can't find them. Hurry." Julia's entire world seemed to tilt as she reread the text. "Your kids left the break room. I can't find them. Hurry." A spike of panic shot through her, and her hands shook so badly she nearly dropped the phone. Carmen and Carlos, her sweet, trusting twins, were wandering the majestic tower alone, in a place bustling with strangers, guards, and strict supervisors who wouldn't hesitate to throw her out if they knew she'd brought children inside. She had to find them, immediately. Forcing herself to breathe, Julia grabbed her cleaning cart and made a dash for the corridor. She barely noticed Mr. Montgomery's office doors sliding shut behind her as she left. Speed was all that mattered now. If Henderson or any other manager saw Carmen and Carlos wandering about, it would mean certain trouble. She might lose her job, and then she wouldn't be able to feed or house her children at all. The hushed, carpeted hallway seemed longer than ever, and her heart thundered so loudly that she could hardly hear her own footsteps. She prayed the elevator would arrive quickly. Every second felt crucial, and she imagined her twins' frightened faces, lost somewhere in the tower's labyrinth of corridors and executive suites. Ding. The elevator doors opened, revealing Henderson inside, arms crossed. "And where do you think you're going in such a rush?" His gaze flicked to her cart, then to her flushed face. "You still have the top floor to finish." Julia froze. Normally, she'd mask her fear under a polite lie, but time was slipping. She didn't know how to deflect him. I have an emergency," she stammered, stepping into the elevator. She pressed the button for the 16th floor repeatedly, hoping he'd leave her alone. Henderson's eyes narrowed. "You realize if you leave your assigned floor without completing your duties, there will be consequences." Her frustration cracked. "Please, just let me go. I promise I'll be back." She could feel tears threatening, her nerves stretched like a tightrope. He didn't budge. The elevator doors began to slide shut, but he stuck out an arm, stopping them. "Your job is at stake," he warned. "I'm holding you personally responsible for finishing the CEO's area today." "I understand," she managed, every muscle in her body taut with urgency. "I'll be back." Henderson finally let the doors close and the elevator began its descent. Julia's legs felt weak. She leaned against the wall, blinking back tears. The moment the doors opened on the 16th floor, she pushed her cart into the corridor and spotted one of the older cleaning women who'd texted her. "Did you see them?" Julia demanded, her breath coming in quick gulps. The woman shook her head, looking apologetic. "I turned around for a moment. They were gone. I asked a security guard to help me look, but he refused." told me to handle my own affairs." She lowered her voice. "I'm sorry. It's not your fault," Julia said, though worry and guilt gnawed at her. "Thank you for texting me." She glanced down the hall. "I'll find them myself." Determined, she hurried along the corridors, checking the small lounge areas and restrooms, calling softly, "Carmen? Carlos?" She didn't want to shout too loudly, afraid of drawing the wrong kind of attention. Each empty corner intensified her panic, and she pushed down the worst scenarios swirling in her mind. She couldn't shake off the thought that maybe her twins had gone looking for her. They were always curious, and they knew she was assigned to upper floors. Could they have wandered onto another elevator? The majestic tower had multiple elevator banks, and each required special key cards for access to restricted zones. But children that young wouldn't understand. She thought of the CEO's floor. Could they have accidentally ridden all the way up? That possibility sent a fresh jolt of alarm through her. Despite her fear of Henderson and her boss's wrath, she refused to stand by. Her children came first. Always. Julia raced to the 15th floor, searching in vain. Nothing. She hopped onto another elevator and pressed the button for the 17th floor, her mind whirling with images of her kids wandering polished hallways filled with strangers in suits. Maybe Carmen and Carlos had stepped out on the wrong floor. Maybe they were crying, unable to find their mother. She bit her lip so hard it nearly bled. Ding. The 17th floor reception area was silent. She scanned the space, calling their names in a hushed voice. A young secretary typing behind a large white desk glanced up. "Ma'am, can I help you?" Julia hesitated. Asking about lost children would raise suspicion, but she had no choice. Her voice trembled. "Did you happen to see two little kids come through here? A boy and a girl, about 5 years old?" The secretary's eyes widened. "Kids? Here?" Then she shook her head. "No, I haven't seen any." Trying to steady her voice, Julia nodded in thanks and continued her search, moving down corridors, checking behind doors, fighting the rising tide of dread. The minutes ticked by mercilessly, and she felt as though she were running through an endless maze of glass walls and executive offices. At last, she spotted an emergency stairwell, the heavy door propped open with a small wedge. That was odd. Fire safety rules usually kept stairwell doors closed. Could the twins have gone there? She hurried over and peered down the spiral of concrete steps. A faint echo drifted upward. A child's voice. "Carlos!" Relief flooded her. She dashed inside. The echo continued from below, so she descended. Her footsteps clanged on the metal steps. She tried to keep her voice calm as she called, "Carlos? Carmen?" "Mommy?" A tiny, trembling reply reached her ears. She found them 2 flights below, huddled on a landing. Their faces lit up with relief when they saw her. She dropped to her knees, wrapping them in her arms, heart pounding with leftover fear. Carmen's eyes were wet with tears. "I'm sorry," Carlos whimpered. "We got scared in the break room. We wanted to find you." Julia pressed them close, her throat tight. "Oh, babies, it's okay. I'm just glad you're safe." She stroked their hair, inhaling their familiar scent. They clung to her, and she realized how badly this place must have terrified them. Surrounded by gleaming hallways and stern adults, of course they'd panicked. After a long moment, she pulled back to examine their tear-streaked faces. "Are you hurt?" Both shook their heads. Carmen sniffled. "A man yelled at us. We ran away." Julia's chest tensed. "What man?" "He wore a dark uniform," Carlos explained, still sniffling. "He said kids aren't allowed. Told us to leave. We got scared." Julia sighed. Likely a guard or maintenance staff. She smoothed their hair, heartsick. She had to get them out of the building before the situation escalated, but she also remembered Henderson's warning. If she left her shift undone, she'd lose her livelihood. She was stuck between a rock and a hard place. Taking Carmen and Carlos by the hand, she led them carefully back up the stairs. She had to think. If she tried to sneak them out now, she'd have to pass through the lobby. That alone would be risky, with security watching. Maybe she could hide them in her supply closet temporarily while she finished the most critical tasks. Then she could slip away at lunch, unnoticed. Her phone buzzed again. She froze, dreading more bad news. Instead, it was an unknown number. She tapped it. A text. "Where did you go? I said we'd talk." "BM?" Her brow furrowed. BM Bruce Montgomery? She recalled how the CEO had mentioned, "We'll talk in a moment," and then left. Was he actually texting her? How did he even have her number? She realized with a pang that perhaps he'd asked Henderson or the supervisor for her contact details, or there was some internal directory. "Mommy, who is it?" Carmen mouthed silently. Julia forced a smile, tucking the phone away. "It's no one important, honey." But inside, her thoughts churned. The CEO wanted to speak with her. Usually that meant trouble. She wondered if he'd discovered the truth about her children or if there was another reason altogether. She reached the 16th floor, leading the twins toward the small janitorial closet. It was cramped, lined with shelves of cleaning supplies, but at least it had a door she could close. That would keep them out of sight if Henderson or anyone else showed up. She hated confining them like that. But what else could she do? Carmen's nose wrinkled. "It smells funny." "I know, sweetheart," Julia murmured, heart aching. "It won't be for long." She dug a small pack of crackers from her pocket, a pitiful snack. "Stay here and don't make noise, okay? As soon as I finish, we'll go home." Carlos nodded bravely, his little hand clutching Carmen's. Julia quietly pulled the door shut, feeling guilt gnaw at her. She was practically hiding her own kids in a broom closet. Tears threatened to rise, but she pushed them down. She had to stay strong. For them. Once they were hidden, she slipped into the hallway. Her phone chimed again, the same unknown number. "If you left because of your supervisor, don't worry. I won't penalize you. Please come back to the top floor when you can." Julia took a steadying breath. She couldn't just ignore the CEO. If he was reaching out, he might have something crucial to say, or something that could cost her this job. The question was, should she go back right away, or complete her cleaning duties first? Henderson expected her to finish the tasks, but ignoring the CEO's direct request might be worse. Her instincts told her to comply with the boss first. Maybe she could buy a little time or even negotiate something that would allow her kids to leave the building safely. Carefully, she typed back, "I had an emergency situation. Cleaning staff issues. We'll be up soon." She pressed send, feeling a twist in her stomach. So much was happening all at once, and no option felt safe. Julia retrieved her cleaning cart, tidied her uniform, and returned to the private elevator that led to Mr. Montgomery's suite. A small voice inside her head questioned the wisdom of returning to the scene of her earlier conversation, especially with her children hidden in a closet downstairs. But she had no better plan. At least if the CEO was expecting her, he might cut her some slack for abandoning the office momentarily. The ride up was tense and silent, but she practiced what she'd say in her head. Maybe something about being called away by her supervisor for additional tasks. She'd keep it vague. After all, Bruce Montgomery was a busy man, not likely to pry into the minute details of a janitor's problems. When the elevator opened, the same quiet reception area greeted her. She pushed through toward his office, feeling her stomach flutter with nerves. As she stepped inside, she found him seated at his desk, still in the same suit, eyes on the cityscape beyond the window. The shattered vase was now gone. She'd cleaned it earlier. But something else had changed. A small pile of folders and a tablet lay on the desk, as though he'd prepared for a meeting. Mr. Montgomery swiveled in his chair. His gaze settled on her, and he offered a polite nod. "Close the door, please." Julia did as asked, her heart galloping. He gestured for her to step closer, and she obediently advanced until she stood opposite his desk. The floor-to-ceiling windows behind him cast bright sunlight over his shoulders, making his silhouette look almost ethereal. "I wanted to speak to you," he began, his voice low and deliberate, "about what happened this morning. That meltdown was—" He sighed. "Unprofessional, but I had my reasons." She nodded, unsure how to respond. "Yes, sir, I understand." A flicker of a smile. "I doubt you do. But regardless." He leaned forward, folding his hands on the desk. "I appreciate you stepping in to clean so quickly, even if you had to leave abruptly. I'd like to offer you something in return." Julia stiffened, confusion racing through her. "Offer me something?" He arched an eyebrow. "I believe in rewarding efficiency and discretion. There are positions available in this building that might better suit a hard-working employee who can handle delicate situations." His tone remained calm, but a hint of intrigue crept in. Her lips parted, words failing. Was he offering her a better job? It seemed too surreal. Why would a powerful CEO pay attention to a low-level janitor? Was he truly that grateful for her help, or was there another motive? Before she could reply, he slid a business card across the desk. "This is my direct line. I want you to think about it, and let me know if you're interested in a position with more responsibility, and naturally better pay. I have a feeling you could excel here given the right opportunity." Blood pounded in her ears. She was torn between astonishment and suspicion. Part of her wanted to grab that card and accept, thinking of Carmen and Carlos's future, the overdue bills, the endless scrimping. But another part of her remained wary. He cleared his throat. "You don't have to give me an answer immediately, but do consider it. I'm not in the habit of making such offers." Julia swallowed hard, feeling a lump in her throat. "Thank you, Mr. Montgomery. I'm grateful." He inclined his head in acknowledgement. "You can head back to your duties now. I have another call soon. But think on what I've said. I'll have my assistant draft a formal invitation if you're open to it." As he reached for his phone, Julia saw her own reflection in the glossy desk. She looked pale and overwhelmed. She took the card, slipping it into her pocket. "I will, thank you again." She turned, nerves aflame, and walked to the door. Her thoughts swirled with questions and hesitant hope. But overshadowing everything was the knowledge that her twins were still hidden in a closet downstairs, waiting for her. For their sake, she had to keep her job, possibly accept this new opportunity. But first, she needed to get out of here, gather Carmen and Carlos, and escape the majestic tower without causing a stir. As she slipped into the hallway, her phone vibrated yet again. Another message. She glanced at the screen, bracing herself for the next wave of crisis. It was from Henderson's number, and it read, "I know about the children." Julia's heart jumped so violently that she almost dropped her phone right there in the executive corridor. A wave of cold fear spread through her limbs. Henderson knew about Carmen and Carlos? How long had he known? And what did he plan to do? Her mind raced. She needed to get back downstairs to her twins, immediately. She couldn't leave them hidden while a man like Henderson with the power to ruin her career lurked around. Even in her anxious state, the question hammered in her head. If he truly knew, why text her instead of confronting her face to face? Was it a threat? A warning? A demand? She breathed in and forced her feet to move, heading straight to the private elevator. Once inside, she hovered her finger over the closed door button, her heart still thrashing in her chest. She quickly tapped out a reply to Henderson, hands unsteady on the phone's tiny keyboard. "What do you mean? Where are you?" Her reflection stared back in the elevator's shiny wall, pale, tense, and uncertain. The elevator began its descent, and she leaned against the side rail, her mind churning. She told herself not to panic yet. There was still a chance she could appease Henderson or beg for mercy. But she also had the vague, unsettling sense that some deeper game was afoot. When she reached the 16th floor, the hallway felt unnaturally quiet. Harsh overhead lighting cast her shadow against the walls. She pushed open the door to the janitorial closet. Carmen and Carlos were huddled together, arms around each other. Both looked up, relief filling their eyes when they saw their mother. "Mommy," Carmen whispered, jumping up and clinging to Julia's waist. Carlos followed, hugging his mother's other side. "Is everything okay?" he asked in a small voice. Julia tried for a reassuring smile. "It will be," she said gently, though her stomach remained tied in knots. She didn't want to frighten them, but she couldn't pretend everything was fine. Not now. "We need to leave soon," she continued, drawing them closer. "But first Her phone buzzed. She glanced down. Another text from Henderson. "Meet me on the 18th floor, service hallway near the storage area. Now." Her pulse hammered. This was not good. "Stay close to me," she told the twins. "No more running off, all right?" They nodded, faces solemn. She led them out of the closet, ignoring the disapproving looks of a few co-workers who spotted the children at her side. Fear trampled over her embarrassment. She had bigger worries right now. She guided Carmen and Carlos to an inconspicuous freight elevator typically used for moving large supplies between floors. It was less monitored than the main passenger elevators, so maybe they could slip by unnoticed. They rode in tense silence until the doors slid open on the 18th floor. The service hallway was dimly lit, lined with boxes and stacked furniture. The distant hum of ventilation surrounded them, giving the corridor a ghostly feel. Julia felt Carmen squeeze her hand a little tighter. A silhouette emerged at the far end. Henderson. He stood by a row of wooden crates, arms folded. His face bore the same stern expression as always. But there was something else there, too. An unsettling glint in his eye that Julia couldn't quite interpret. She took a cautious step forward, keeping the twins behind her. "Mr. Henderson, you—" He raised a hand, silencing her. "So it's true. You brought children into the building." His gaze flicked to Carmen and Carlos, who shrank under his scrutiny. "If the management finds out, you know what happens to you, don't you?" Julia's throat felt like sandpaper. "I know. Please." She swallowed. "I had no choice. My babysitter canceled, and I had no one else to turn to. I'm sorry." Henderson's lips curved in a cold, humorless smile. "Apologies won't fix this, Ms. Reyes. You've broken policy. The cost could be your job." She felt Carmen tremble, and she brushed the girl's shoulder in comfort. I'll do anything, just please don't report me." The words felt shameful leaving her mouth, but desperation outweighed pride. "Anything?" He stepped closer. Interesting choice of words. Julia's stomach churned. In that moment, she realized Henderson's agenda might not be limited to exposing her or seeking some petty revenge. His expression was too calculating. "What do you want?" she managed quietly. He glanced at the twins. "Send them away," he snapped, voice harsh. "This conversation is for adults." Julia's protective instincts flared. "I'm not leaving them alone." Henderson's eyes hardened. For a tense second, it seemed like he might yell or lunge. Instead, he exhaled impatiently. "Fine, then keep them quiet. Listen carefully. I'm aware that Mr. Montgomery called you to his office. Twice." His gaze sharpened. "You were in there quite a while. Care to explain why the CEO is so interested in a low-level cleaning lady?" Julia's skin prickled. He asked me to clean up after he broke a vase. It was an emergency." She tried to keep her tone even, skipping over the new job offer. That part was none of Henderson's business. Henderson smirked. "Just an emergency cleaning, Funny because I saw you heading back to his office after you'd already left once, not to mention you got a text from him." Her mind reeled. How did he know about the text? Maybe from the building's system logs or from overhearing someone. She forced calm into her voice. "It's not what you think. He just wanted to thank me, that's all." "Sure he did," Henderson said, unconvinced. "Word around the building is that you might be a special project for the boss. Some new role." His gaze landed on her phone. "Which would be interesting since you're hardly qualified for more than janitorial duties." Julia bristled, feeling Carmen and Carlos stiffen behind her. A wave of shame and anger stirred, but she kept her voice steady. "Why do you care, Mr. Henderson?" He stepped closer, dropping his voice to a hiss. "Because I've spent years trying to move up in this company, and I won't let someone like you," he pointed at her uniform, "just waltz in and overshadow my efforts. Do you know how easily I can sabotage you?" Julia's heart thumped. She felt Carlos grip her arm. "I don't want to overshadow anyone," she insisted, voice trembling. "I only want to provide for my kids, that's all." Henderson's expression flickered with something akin to disdain. "Well, if you want to keep feeding them, you'll help me. We can, let's say, strike a bargain." Her gut twisted. "What do you mean?" He glanced over his shoulder, checking if they were alone. "I know Mr. Montgomery is dealing with big acquisitions and hush-hush negotiations right now. If he's offered you some new position, you might gain access to certain documents or overhear certain conversations. Invaluable information." His eyes gleamed with ambition. "Get me something I can use. Proof of shady deals, internal memos, anything that puts me one step ahead. Then I'll forget all about your children being here." Julia's head spun. He was asking her to spy on Bruce Montgomery? That seemed like corporate espionage, or at least a severe betrayal of trust. Even if she considered it, she had no guarantee Henderson wouldn't just turn her in afterward. "You're blackmailing me," she whispered, horror in her voice. His mouth twisted. "Call it what you will, but it's simple. You help me climb the ladder, and I conveniently turn a blind eye to your violation of policy. If you refuse, well, you can say goodbye to your job." His gaze flicked down to Carmen and Carlos. "And your paycheck." Julia felt trapped. The building felt colder than ever, and her mind scrambled for a way out. She could run to Mr. Montgomery for help. But would he protect her? Or would he see her as a nuisance, risking his own corporate secrets? Henderson's threat loomed large. She thought about her twins huddled behind her, how she'd do anything to keep a roof over their heads. Carmen tugged on Julia's sleeve, her little voice trembling. "Mommy, I'm scared." Julia knelt, pulling them into a hug. "It's okay," she whispered, though it was a promise she didn't know if she could keep. Henderson's phone vibrated in his pocket and he glanced at it. Impatience seeped into his tone. "Well, I don't have all day. Yes or no?" Julia rose to her feet again, mind swirling. The seconds felt like hours. Refuse him and she'd be fired. Comply, and she'd betray the only man who might be offering a ray of hope. She swallowed, her throat dry. I need time to think," she finally said. Henderson's jaw tightened. "I'll give you until tomorrow morning. If you don't come to me with something useful by then, I'll report your violation." He started to walk away, then paused to look back. "Have a good evening, and keep that phone close. I'll be waiting for your decision." He stalked down the corridor, leaving her and the children standing in a tense silence broken only by the whir of ventilation. Julia glanced at Carmen and Carlos. Their eyes were wide, reflecting the weight of her predicament. She wanted to cry, but she refused to let them see that. Instead, she forced herself to exhale slowly. "We're leaving," she said quietly, taking their hands. This time, there would be no returning to finish her shift. Whatever the consequences, she had to get her children home. The cost of staying longer, risking another run-in with Henderson or more trouble, was too high. They retraced their steps to the freight elevator. Julia pressed the button to the lobby. No one else was around, which was both a blessing and a cause for further anxiety. She had to slip past security with 2 children in tow. She considered using the side exit if possible. As the elevator descended, her phone buzzed again. She jolted, half expecting another threat from Henderson. Instead, it was from Bruce Montgomery's number. "If you're free later, I'd like to discuss the offer. Let me know." She stared at the words, a swirl of guilt and confusion. She couldn't help but think, was the CEO aware that his own building supervisor wanted to exploit him? Could she trust him enough to confide in him about Henderson's blackmail? Or would that only backfire? The elevator doors opened on the ground level. Julia quickly guided the twins out, keeping her head low. A security guard stood near the main entrance, busy glancing at monitors. She quietly steered Carmen and Carlos toward a side corridor that led to a lesser-used exit. Her pulse thundered. One wrong step and she might be questioned, or worse. But luck was on their side. They slipped through a metal door into an alley behind the tower, stepping out into the late afternoon sun. The fresh air felt like freedom. Carmen rubbed her eyes, and Carlos exhaled with relief. Julia glanced upward at the towering structure, the glass reflecting the sky in a perfect mirror. It was hard to believe all this tension was housed within those walls. So many secrets, so many threats. Her phone felt heavy in her pocket, bearing messages from two powerful men who both held her fate in different ways. She needed a plan, but first, she would make sure her children were safe at home. Everything else, Bruce Montgomery's job offer, Henderson's blackmail, could wait until tomorrow. Though with each step she took, worry gnawed at her, whispering that the clock was already ticking. The apartment smelled faintly of antiseptic and old paint, a lingering reminder of the building's last attempt at renovation years ago. Julia shut the door behind her, engaging the flimsy lock. It wouldn't keep out a determined intruder, but at least it gave her a small sense of security. Carmen and Carlos kicked off their shoes by the doormat, quietly shuffling into the living area. Usually, they'd race around shouting about their day or beg for a snack the moment they got home. Today, though, they were subdued, shell-shocked from hours of uncertainty and the confrontation with Henderson. Julia set her keys on the rickety kitchen table, trying to calm the swirl of thoughts in her head. The flickering overhead light illuminated the peeling wallpaper, and she inwardly steeled herself for the evening's challenges. She had no shift tomorrow, but that only meant she'd lose a day's pay, something she couldn't really afford. She dropped onto the worn couch, rubbing her temples. The small living room felt claustrophobic. She couldn't stop replaying Henderson's ultimatum, spy on Mr. Montgomery or face unemployment. Yet there was also that other possibility, the CEO's job offer, which seemed surreal and suspicious all at once. Carmen climbed onto the couch beside her, while Carlos curled up on her other side. They both looked for reassurance. Julia forced a gentle smile, tucking Carmen's curls behind her ear. "Are you two okay?" she asked softly. Carlos shrugged. "That man was mean," he whispered, referencing Henderson. "He said we weren't allowed and started yelling." Carmen nodded, eyes watery. "We just wanted to find you, Mommy." Julia's heart clenched. "I know." She pulled them close, enveloping them in a hug. "I'm sorry. You won't have to come to work with me again, I promise." It was a vow she intended to keep, though how she'd manage it remained a mystery. She slowly released them, realizing they needed normalcy, a decent meal, maybe a calming activity. She rose and headed to the kitchen, rummaging through the cupboards. Supplies were meager, a half bag of rice, some beans, a can of tomatoes, and a few wilted vegetables. It would have to do. While she started the stove, Carmen dragged a stool over and offered to help chop. The quiet routine of cooking usually calmed Julia. Tonight, each chop of the knife felt heavier. She imagined the conversation she might have if she dared to contact Bruce Montgomery and explain Henderson's blackmail. Would he believe her, or would he assume she was trying to play them against each other? With a man as guarded as Mr. Montgomery, that could backfire. A sudden memory struck her. The day she found out she was pregnant, how excited she'd been, how her husband had assured her they'd handle everything together. Then he vanished. Another betrayal that had left her alone. For a moment, she wondered if trusting Bruce Montgomery, or even letting him see her vulnerability, might lead to a similar betrayal. But Henderson was no better. He was actively threatening her now. She sighed, stirring the contents of the pot. Carmen set out 2 cups for herself and Carlos on the table. Julia glanced at the lone chipped mug she used for her coffee. Might as well fill that too. She needed the jolt. By the time they were done cooking, the aroma of lightly seasoned rice and beans floated through the cramped apartment. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm and filling. The three of them ate quietly, the tension of the day still weighing on them. After dinner, Julia set the twins up with an old puzzle on the living room floor, praying it would distract them from the day's troubles. Finally, her phone buzzed. She almost jumped, nerves raw. Was it Henderson or Mr. Montgomery? She wiped her hands on a dish towel and checked the screen. Unknown number. Julia, please let me know if you have questions about the position. BM. Her stomach knotted. She stared at the text. He'd used her first name this time, and that unsettled her in a way she couldn't explain. The message was polite, straightforward, but it reminded her she was standing at a crossroads. She typed a terse reply, hoping to keep things neutral. Thank you, Mr. Montgomery. I'll think about it. She hesitated, then added, I appreciate the opportunity. Send. She clutched the phone, half expecting an immediate response, but none came. Maybe he was busy or decided to leave her alone for the evening. She set the phone aside, ignoring the swirl of relief and dread in her chest. Next, she had to figure out Henderson. Henderson had demanded results by tomorrow morning. Did that mean at the start of the next shift? Or literally early morning? Either way, time was short. She sat on the couch watching as Carmen and Carlos fiddled with their puzzle pieces, quietly bickering about which piece fit where. They seemed calmer now, but still tense. How about we watch something fun? Julia suggested, trying to lighten the mood. I think there's a cartoon on the local channel around this time. The twins perked up. They moved to the couch, settling on either side of her. Julia turned on the battered old TV, flipping through a few static-heavy channels until she found a children's show. Bright colors and goofy characters filled the screen, the show's cheerful music a welcome break from the day's gloom. But Julia couldn't relax. Even with cartoon silliness playing in front of her, her thoughts spun relentlessly. She tried to weigh her options, spying on Montgomery for Henderson. She'd remain employed for a while, but she'd be deceiving a powerful man who might eventually learn of her betrayal. Then again, if Henderson had enough connections to blackmail her now, who was to say he wouldn't turn on her anyway? Confiding in Montgomery, if Bruce was genuine about offering her a position with more responsibility, maybe he'd understand her predicament, but that risked him seeing her as a troublemaker or a liability, and if he doubted her motives, she might lose everything. Quit and run. Not really an option. She had no savings, no backup plan, and no way to cover next month's rent, let alone feed the twins. She'd be evicted in no time. None of them felt safe. Anxiously, she reached for her phone again, as if clarity might appear in her messages. Instead, it lit up with an alert for a missed call from an unknown number. She braced herself and listened to the voicemail. Henderson's voice crackled through the speaker. You have until 9 a.m. tomorrow. I'll be in the small conference room on the 10th floor. Bring me something on Montgomery or hand in your resignation. A pause, then more softly. Don't test me on this, Ms. Reyes. Tears pricked Julia's eyes, the oppressive weight of fear washing over her. She clenched the phone, frustration and desperation surging. What was she supposed to do? She glanced at Carmen and Carlos, who were engrossed in the cartoon. They looked so small and innocent, trusting that their mother would protect them no matter what. She inhaled slowly and stood, needing air. I'll be right back, she told the twins. Stay here, okay? They nodded, eyes still on the screen. She stepped onto the tiny balcony, a mere slab of concrete barely big enough for one person, closing the sliding door behind her. The evening air was cool on her skin. Cars rumbled in the streets below, headlights cutting through the darkness. Above, the stars were faint, drowned out by the city's glow. She let out a shaky breath, wrestling with the urge to scream at the unfairness of it all. She'd spent her life trying to do the right thing, working tirelessly, caring for her children. and now she was cornered by a corporate henchman and a looming billionaire, forced to gamble her entire future. As she leaned on the flimsy balcony railing, a memory surfaced, her mother's voice telling her as a child that no matter how hopeless things seemed, there was always a path forward if you had the courage to look for it. She clung to that thought. Maybe the path was to be honest. If she spied for Henderson, it would eat at her conscience, and she might end up unemployed anyway when the truth came out. But if she told Mr. Montgomery about Henderson's demands, there was a chance, perhaps a slim one, that he'd intervene to help. At worst, Montgomery might fire Henderson on the spot or address the blackmail, but would he also fire her for bringing her children? She wasn't sure. Her phone chimed, snapping her from her thoughts. A text from the babysitter, Belinda, apologizing again for canceling. "I can watch them tomorrow if you still need," the message read. Julia typed back a quick thanks, heart gladdened by at least that small relief. She wouldn't have to drag Carmen and Carlos to the tower again. She gazed at the sky one last time, searching for strength before returning inside. The cartoon had ended, replaced by commercials. Carmen yawned. Carlos blinked sleepily. She turned off the TV and ushered them to brush their teeth and get ready for bed. In the cramped bedroom, the twins nestled into a single mattress covered with mismatched sheets. Julia kissed their foreheads, then turned off the lamp. A sliver of light from the hallway cut across the floor, revealing Carmen's half-lidded gaze and Carlos's small arms curled under his pillow. Despite the day's turmoil, they drifted to sleep, trusting her to make things right. Hours later, Julia sat at the kitchen table, a single lamp glowing overhead. A notepad lay before her with scribbles of possibilities, though each felt more like a dead end. The only viable plan that might preserve her integrity was to come clean to Bruce Montgomery about Henderson's blackmail attempt. Otherwise, she'd lose her job. But confiding in a billionaire CEO about internal corruption sounded like a terrifying gamble. At around midnight, exhaustion weighed on her. She stepped into the dim hallway, passing the door to the twins' room. Soft snores reassured her they were resting peacefully. In the living room, she sank onto the couch, phone in hand, eyes aching for rest, but mind still whirling. If she could just get a little sleep, maybe everything would be clearer in the morning. She put her phone on silent, not wanting any more shocking messages or calls. Tomorrow's confrontation with Henderson loomed over her, an approaching storm she had no idea how to weather. She remembered the expression on Mr. Montgomery's face earlier, a man weighed down by his own burdens. If he was truly as honorable as he seemed in that fleeting moment, maybe he'd understand. As her eyelids grew heavy, a single thought crystallized in her mind. She had to at least try. It was better than bowing to Henderson's blackmail. She'd ask Mr. Montgomery for a brief meeting. Maybe she could secure an early appointment before Henderson's 9 a.m. demand and lay out the truth. If that failed, well, she might lose everything. But at least she'd have done it without stabbing anyone in the back. She drifted off to a fitful sleep on the couch, her last conscious glimpse the phone's dark screen reflecting her own worried face. Outside, the city lights glimmered, and in the distance, the majestic tower stood, silent witness to her uncertain fate. Morning broke softly through the thin curtains of Julia's living room, illuminating the worn couch where she had finally dozed off. The old city sounds, delivery trucks, early commuters, blended into a distant hum. She woke with a start, heart pounding before she even remembered why. Her phone read 6:25 a.m. She had less than 3 hours until Henderson's 9 a.m. deadline. A chill of anxiety coursed through her, but she steadied her breathing, determined to follow her plan. Contact Mr. Montgomery before Henderson could corner her. She rose, quietly checking on Carmen and Carlos. They were still fast asleep, their small forms tucked under the threadbare blanket. Each peaceful breath reminded her why she had to keep fighting. She tiptoed into the kitchen and took out her phone, scrolling to the text messages from Bruce Montgomery. Her pulse thumped. Was it too early to text a billionaire CEO? Did he even keep normal hours? She decided there was no time to wait. If he ignored the message, so be it. She tapped out a message with trembling fingers. "Good morning, Mr. Montgomery. I was hoping to speak with you briefly before 9 a.m. if possible. It's about an urgent matter related to your offer. Please let me know. Julia Reyes." She pressed send, nerves sparking. Then she grabbed a glass, filled it with water, and gulped it down. Forcing a shaky exhale, she told herself she had to trust this gamble. If Mr. Montgomery was genuine, maybe he'd grant her a few minutes. If not, she'd have to face Henderson empty-handed. 20 minutes crawled by while she pretended to busy herself, tidying up dishes and wiping the kitchen counter. Her phone remained maddeningly silent. She began to prepare a simple breakfast for the twins, scrambled eggs and toast from the last scraps of bread. At 7:10, the phone buzzed. Julia nearly knocked over the carton of eggs in her haste to check. The text was from an unknown number, but she recognized the short signature. BM. Morning. Please meet me at 8:15 in my private office. Use the service elevator to avoid delays. BM. A rush of relief and fear slammed into her at once. She closed her eyes, pressing a hand to her chest. This was her chance. Her one shot at telling him about Henderson's scheme. If this went wrong, well, she couldn't bear to think about that. She glanced at the clock. She had about an hour before she needed to leave. That left little time to get the twins ready, drop them with Belinda, the babysitter who'd texted last night, and rush across town. She sprang into action, gently waking Carmen and Carlos. "Good morning, my loves," she whispered, stroking their hair. "We have a busy day." They stirred, yawning and rubbing sleepy eyes. Carlos mumbled, "Are we going back to that big building?" Julia forced a gentle smile. "Not you, sweetheart. You'll stay with Ms. Belinda today." Carmen's eyes flickered with relief. "Okay, I don't like that man who yelled." "Me neither," Julia murmured, silently vowing to keep Henderson away from her children forever. She moved quickly through the morning routine, handing them fresh clothes, guiding them to brush their teeth, giving them each a portion of scrambled eggs. The tightness in her chest never eased. At 7:40, she strapped their shoes on, ushered them out the door, and hurried down the worn stairs into the crisp morning air. Belinda's apartment was 2 blocks away, close enough to reach on foot. The kindly older woman greeted them with a sympathetic smile, inviting the twins in. Julia explained the situation as simply as she could, that she had to run a last-minute errand for work. Belinda nodded with understanding, agreeing to watch them for as long as needed. "We'll have fun," Belinda said, kneeling so she was at eye level with Carmen and Carlos. "You two like pancakes?" The twins brightened, nodding eagerly. Julia allowed herself a moment's relief. "Thank you again," she told Belinda earnestly, hugging the children goodbye. They clung to her waist and she kissed their foreheads. "Be good," she whispered. "I'll be back soon." With that, she hurried off, already aware she had little time to spare. A brisk walk took her to the nearest bus stop, where she boarded the next bus heading toward downtown. The rush-hour traffic dragged, and each red light felt like an eternity. By the time the majestic tower came into view, it was 8:05. Julia hopped off the bus, weaving through morning crowds. Business people streamed into the lobby, briefcases in hand. She clutched the phone in her pocket, remembering Mr. Montgomery's instruction to use the service elevator. She slipped around to a side entrance where delivery trucks offloaded. A security guard was posted there, but he seemed half distracted by a conversation on his walkie-talkie. She ducked her head and walked with purpose, hoping her cleaning uniform from yesterday and her ID badge would let her pass. Miraculously, he only gave her a cursory glance. She swiped her badge at the side door and stepped inside. The service hallway was cramped, filled with crates and cleaning supplies. Heart-hammering, she found the service elevator, which she knew went directly to the top floors, bypassing the busy main lobby and Henderson's prying eyes. At 8:13, she arrived on the 20th floor. No one else was in sight. She pushed through the reception area and found Mr. Montgomery's office doors. Anxiety flared again, but she reminded herself this was her best shot. She exhaled, smoothed her hair, then tapped the discreet panel. The doors slid open, revealing the bright expanse of his private suite. Morning sunlight spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, making the polished floor gleam. Inside, Bruce Montgomery stood by his desk, wearing a charcoal suit and examining some documents. He glanced up when she entered, and he offered a faint acknowledging nod. "Julia," he said, using her first name again with unexpected familiarity. "Thanks for coming on short notice. Close the door, please." She did so, and for a moment they stood in silence, the hum of the air conditioner the only sound. He gestured to a plush armchair opposite his desk. "Sit," he offered. Julia eased into it, her posture tense. She felt the weight of his gaze as he rounded the desk and took his seat. His eyes were sharp but not unkind. He adjusted a cufflink. "I appreciate your willingness to discuss this so soon. I gather something urgent has come up?" She swallowed, gathering courage. "Yes, there's something I have to tell you. It's not easy." She paused, noting how his expression remained composed, inviting her to continue. "But first I want to thank you for your offer. I'm flattered and I'm interested. Truly." His eyebrows lifted. "I'm glad to hear it. You deserve better than janitorial work, though I suspect you're good at everything you do." He tapped a folder on his desk. "But please, go on. I sense there's more." Julia licked her dry lips. "I'm in a difficult position, Mr. Montgomery. There's a person in this building who's threatening me." She met his gaze, feeling tears threaten. She forced them back. "He found out I brought my children here, long story, and he's blackmailing me to spy on you, or else he'll make sure I'm fired." She braced for anger or shock or dismissal. Bruce Montgomery's face tightened, revealing a flicker of controlled fury. Yet it wasn't aimed at her. Slowly he leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "Blackmail," he repeated, voice low. "I assume you're speaking of Henderson." Her eyes widened. "How did you—" He exhaled, shaking his head in a bitter half-smile. "I had my suspicions. Henderson has been restless for some time, angling for a promotion that won't happen. When I offered you a new position, he took immediate notice. I didn't think he'd stoop to such extremes." Julia's relief was tinged with disbelief. You knew I brought my children in?" He hesitated. "I heard rumors, and then last night one of the cleaning staff mentioned a potential incident." He lifted a hand to forestall her apologies. "Look, I'm not happy about the policy breach, but I understand emergencies. The real concern is Henderson exploiting this to corner you." Her shoulders slumped with a mixture of shame and gratitude. "I'm so sorry, sir. I never meant to break the rules, but I had no one to watch them. Then Henderson—" She trailed off, overwhelmed by the enormity of it all. Montgomery's gaze softened. "Julia, you're clearly just trying to provide for your family. While your method wasn't ideal, I won't punish you. We can work it out. But Henderson's behavior is a different matter. He's stepped far beyond acceptable bounds." She swallowed hard. "So you believe me?" He nodded firmly. "I do. You have no reason to lie, especially risking your job to come forward." He closed the folder, then stood, his posture commanding. "What exactly did Henderson demand you do?" She explained the threat in detail. How Henderson wanted internal documents or information that might undermine the CEO. As she spoke, Bruce's jaw tightened and his eyes darkened. "That man has no idea what he's playing with," he murmured, glancing at the cityscape outside. He turned back, expression resolute. "I'll handle Henderson, but I need you to do something for me." Julia's heart skipped. "What is it?" He crossed around the desk, standing closer than before. Meet him at 9 a.m. as he demanded. Lead him to believe you have something. I want to catch him in the act. Get proof that he's coercing an employee for personal gain. Then I can fire him legally and ensure he doesn't slither out with some wrongful termination suit. Fear twisted in her stomach. You mean, go along with his plan? His voice remained calm, yet beneath it lay a steely determination. Only enough to draw out a clear admission of blackmail. I'll position security to record it. Once we have that evidence, he's done. Julia's thoughts raced. So that was Bruce's plan. Entrap Henderson to protect her and the company. She imagined confronting that man again, pretending to spy, risking he'd suspect a setup. But what if Henderson saw through it? Her voice shook. That sounds dangerous. Montgomery met her gaze. I won't let harm come to you. My security detail will intervene at any sign of escalation. He rested a reassuring hand on the arm of her chair. If we don't do this, Henderson might keep blackmailing you or someone else. Besides, once he's out, your job and your new position will be safe. She fought back a surge of gratitude, trembling at the enormity of his offer. You're really willing to give me a better role here, even after all this? His eyes flickered with something like empathy. I've seen honest workers ground down by people like Henderson. You deserve a chance to rise, Julia. He paused, then continued more softly, and I won't abandon you in a crisis. Her throat tightened. She'd never expected a CEO to speak such kind words. For a second, she recalled her ex-husband's promises, how quickly they'd turn to ashes. Yet something about Bruce Montgomery's demeanor felt different, steady, focused, unwavering. Perhaps she wanted to believe in him, if only for her children's sake. The clock on his desk read 8:35. Time was short. She took a shaky breath. All right, I'll do it. Tell me what I need to do. He pressed a button on the desk phone. Cassandra, he said to whoever answered, please have our security team stand by near the 10th floor conference room at 8:55. I'll give further instructions. He ended the call, turning back to Julia. Meet Henderson as planned. I'll be watching from a discreet vantage. Try to get him talking about his demands, especially anything about you supplying intel on me. A knot of worry formed in her gut. What if he asks for files I don't have? Bruce nodded. Give him something generic, an empty folder or a bogus memo. We'll have a decoy prepared, enough to convince him you're cooperating. He picked up a manila folder from his desk. Here, inside are useless copies of old project reports. Nothing critical. He handed it to her with a faint, reassuring smile. Julia accepted it with trembling hands. I'm scared, she admitted. He could turn violent or call security on me. You won't be alone, Montgomery replied. I'll be close, along with trained personnel. The moment we have what we need, we'll intervene. He hesitated, then gently touched her shoulder. This is your choice. If you back out, I'll still find a way to handle Henderson, but it may be harder to protect you. The sincerity in his eyes made her decision easier. She nodded, firming her resolve. I'll do it. Good. Let's move. The 10th floor, right? He glanced at the time, 8:42. We have about 15 minutes. He offered her a business card. If something goes wrong, call or text me immediately. I'll respond. Julia slid the card into her pocket, alongside the decoy folder. Her heart hammered, but a small hope flickered inside. Maybe, for once, she'd have someone in her corner, someone powerful enough to shield her from a bully like Henderson. They left the office, striding briskly down the corridor. She took the service elevator again, while Bruce would presumably use another route or the stairs to remain unseen. The plan was to converge on the 10th floor conference room with security lying in wait. As the elevator descended, Julia took a shaky breath, reminding herself why she was doing this. Carmen and Carlos. If this succeeded, she could protect them, keep her job, and maybe build a better life. If it failed, She pressed her lips into a tight line. It wouldn't fail. She wouldn't let it. Ding. The elevator opened on the 10th floor, an area she'd rarely visited. Industrial-style carpet, fluorescent lights, bland beige walls. She checked her phone. It was 8:54. Henderson wanted to meet at 9 Susa. Perfect timing. Her heart thundered with each step toward the small conference room. She passed a couple of office doors labeled with obscure department names, hoping no one would stop her. At the corridor's end, a glass-paneled door revealed a modest meeting space, an oval table, 6 chairs, a whiteboard. Through the glass, she saw Henderson pacing inside, his back turned. Julia inhaled, summoning courage. She stepped forward and quietly opened the door, entering. Henderson spun around, a guarded expression on his face. His eyes swept over her, landing on the manila folder in her grip. "You're on time," he said tersely, checking his watch. "That's a good start." He nodded at the folder. "Is that what I think it is?" Julia forced a neutral expression. "Yes. Internal documents. I managed to sneak them out, but I need you to confirm something first." She edged forward, heart pounding. "If I give you what you want, you'll keep my children out of this? You won't tell anyone I brought them in?" He smirked. "That's the deal. Of course, if these papers aren't useful, we'll have another problem. Let me see." She stepped closer, holding her breath. Her palms were clammy, and her grip on the folder shook. She slid it onto the table. Henderson grabbed it, leafing through the pages. Julia fought the urge to glance around for security, hoping they were nearby, capturing every word. Henderson's brow furrowed. These look like standard reports. No details on the acquisitions, nothing incriminating. Is that all you have? Julia's mouth went dry. I couldn't access more sensitive files yet. Mr. Montgomery only hinted at bigger projects. He didn't let me near them, but I'm working on it. She prayed this would buy her time. He scowled, tossing the papers onto the table. Not good enough. I need something concrete. Proof that Montgomery's hiding assets or forging partnerships under the radar. What about digital access? Didn't he give you any logins? She shook her head. Not yet. This was all I could get for now. Just, please be patient. Don't report me over the children. I promise I'll bring more soon. Henderson's lips curled in contempt. If you think I'm letting you off with worthless scraps, you're mistaken. Either you prove your loyalty now, or you're finished. Panic flared. She tried to stall. Just give me one more day. He's meeting with investors tomorrow. I might overhear something. Suddenly, the conference room door swung open. Henderson jumped, spinning around. 2 stern-looking security guards stepped in, followed by Bruce Montgomery himself. A cold fury emanated from the CEO's eyes. "What is this?" Henderson spat, stepping back instinctively. Bruce surveyed the scene with regal composure. "I think you know. We have your entire conversation recorded, Henderson. Blackmailing an employee, coercing her to steal documents. This is beyond salvageable." Henderson's face reddened. "This is entrapment. You can't just—" Montgomery's voice was low and dangerous. "I can, and I have. These guards will escort you to HR, where you'll sign the necessary termination papers. Then you'll be turned over to legal authorities for further action if we choose." He looked at Julia. "Thank you for your cooperation, Ms. Reyes." Relief flooded Julia's veins, her legs nearly giving out. Henderson glared at her, livid. "You think you're safe now? Montgomery can't protect you forever." She flinched, but Bruce stepped forward. "That's enough. Don't make this worse. Gentlemen," he nodded to the guards, "remove him." In seconds, Henderson was disarmed of his company badge and phone, then escorted out, protesting every step. The moment the door closed behind them, Julia let out a shaky exhale. Bruce turned to her, tension draining from his features. "It's over," he said gently. "You did well." She swayed, exhaustion and adrenaline colliding. I I can't believe it actually worked." He offered a small, reassuring smile. "You stood up for yourself with help." His expression turned serious. "But this was only possible because you spoke up. I admire that, Julia." Her heart fluttered. She managed a nod, too overwhelmed for words. Outside, down the hall, raised voices signaled Henderson's final attempts at protest before a distant elevator ding carried him away. Inside the small conference room, quiet settled around them like a balm. Julia realized her life had just changed. Henderson was gone. No more blackmail threat. She still needed to face the fallout of bringing her children to work and breaching policy, but Bruce Montgomery's earlier promise of leniency and a better role hovered in the background. She stared at him, unsure what came next. He sensed her uncertainty and cleared his throat. "Let's go to my office and discuss your new position if you're still interested. I believe we have much to talk about." Her tired eyes lifted, meeting his steady gaze. "Yes," she whispered. "I'm interested." Because for the first time in a long while, she felt more than a flicker of hope. She felt the beginnings of a brighter path forward. Julia followed Bruce Montgomery back to his private office on the top floor, still in a daze from the rapid events of that morning. It was surreal to think that barely an hour ago, she had been bracing herself for Henderson's threats, uncertain if Mr. Montgomery would even believe her. Now, Henderson was the one escorted out in disgrace. The moment they stepped inside the CEO's sweeping suite, Bruce signaled for the doors to close behind them. He walked across the immaculate floor, stopping by the expanse of glass that overlooked the city. Morning light illuminated him from behind, casting his tall frame in faint silhouette. He turned and studied her, hands in his pockets. She still clutched the folder of decoy documents, feeling both awkward and relieved beyond measure. "Please," he said softly, gesturing toward a low-slung white sofa near the window. "Sit. You've had quite the morning. We both have." Julia managed a small smile, placing the folder on a polished side table. She eased herself onto the sofa, heart still thumping with lingering adrenaline. Bruce unbuttoned his suit jacket and took a seat in a matching armchair across from her, resting his forearms on his knees. "First," he began, his voice laced with genuine warmth, "let me thank you. You showed a lot of courage. Most employees in your position would have either caved to Henderson's demands or quit. You did neither." She exhaled shakily. I couldn't betray you after you'd been so generous, and I couldn't let Henderson ruin my children's future." He nodded. "I understand. Family comes first." A flicker of something, pain or memory, crossed his expression, gone in an instant. "I've arranged for HR to finalize Henderson's termination. He won't be allowed back in the building." Julia's shoulders sagged with relief. "Thank you. I was worried he might retaliate." Bruce's tone turned reassuring. "He won't get that chance. I'll make sure of it." A contemplative silence filled the room. Julia found herself examining the details of the office she hadn't noticed before. The subtle geometric patterns in the wall paneling, the discreet bar cart in a corner, a single black and white photograph of a woman and child on a side table. Perhaps family. She wondered about the private life of a man like Bruce Montgomery, who seemed to carry a burden of his own. At last, he cleared his throat. "Now, regarding the position I mentioned," he pulled a sleek tablet from his jacket, tapped it a few times, then set it aside. "I want to offer you a role that suits your skills and reliability, something that isn't just janitorial. But first, I need to know more about you." Julia's cheeks warmed. I'm just a single mom, barely finished high school. I've worked as a cleaner most of my adult life. I don't have fancy diplomas." He held up a hand. "Degrees aren't everything. Hard work, loyalty, and adaptability count for more in some situations, especially here." His gaze was steady. "Why don't you start from the beginning? How you ended up working in this building, what you did before, and so on." Though she felt self-conscious, She sensed no judgment in his voice, only curiosity. So haltingly, she told him about her early life, dropping out of community college due to financial strains, marrying young, her husband leaving when the twins were born. She mentioned struggling to pay rent, bouncing between cleaning jobs in different offices. Then I landed this position, which at least had somewhat reliable hours. But it's been tough, she admitted, voice catching. I've had to bring Carmen and Carlos along a few times when babysitters canceled. Bruce listened intently, his expression reflecting empathy rather than pity. Raising children alone is no small feat, he said quietly when she paused. No wonder you sometimes had to break the rules. I can't condone it officially, but I'm not blind to real-life hardships. Julia's eyes stung with unshed tears. No boss had ever spoken to her with such understanding. I appreciate that, she managed. He glanced at the tablet again. Given your situation, I want to propose a position where you won't be at the mercy of unpredictable shifts, something with stable hours and better pay. Her heartbeat quickened. What kind of position? Bruce leaned forward. Let's call it a junior administrative role, at least to start. You'd assist with scheduling, coordinate minor events, handle some clerical tasks. Over time, if you're willing to learn, you could take on more responsibilities. Maybe even work your way up to a senior assistant or office manager. Her mind reeled. A junior administrative role at Montgomery's corporation? That was a massive leap from scrubbing floors. But I have no office experience. I can use a computer, sure, but... He waved off her doubt. We provide training. I have staff who can mentor you. As long as you're willing to put in the effort, I'm confident you can manage. She swallowed, hope and fear tangling inside her. This is more than I ever expected. But why? He studied her, his voice thoughtful. Because I see potential in you. And to be blunt, I need people I can trust. People who won't fold at the first sign of trouble. You've proven that. A flutter of gratitude bloomed in her chest. For years, she'd felt invisible. Just another face scrubbing toilets or mopping floors. Now, someone was acknowledging her worth. I'll do my best, I promise. His answering smile was faint but genuine. I'm sure you will. He rose and walked to his desk, retrieving a thin folder. Here's a preliminary employment agreement, basic terms, starting salary, probation period details. Julia took the folder with trembling fingers. Even the idea of signing a contract for an administrative role felt surreal. Thank you, she whispered. Bruce inclined his head. Review it tonight. We can finalize tomorrow. For now, you should get some rest. It's been a hard day already. She nodded, tucking the folder under her arm. Yes, sir. Thank you again. I can't tell you how much this means to me. He pressed his lips into a thoughtful line, then extended his hand. I'm glad to help someone worthy of it. She shook his hand, marveling at how this morning's crisis had turned into a lifeline. When they released, Bruce cleared his throat. By the way, he said, your children, I assume you'll have a stable babysitter from now on? Julia's cheeks colored. Yes, I already spoke to Belinda, my neighbor. She's more reliable than my last sitter. I won't bring them here again. His eyes flickered with something like relief. Good. No more policy violations, A trace of humor softened his tone. She managed a small laugh, though tears of relief prickled. No more, she promised. They parted ways in the corridor, Bruce heading to another meeting, while Julia rode the service elevator down, hugging her new employment agreement close. She half expected security to stop her and demand she hand it over. So surreal was the notion that the CEO had just rescued her from blackmail and offered her a legitimate office job. But no one did. She passed the ground floor unchallenged, stepping out onto the busy city street where the sun was still climbing. The rest of the day was a blur of emotion and errands. She swung by Belinda's place, hugging Carmen and Carlos with fresh joy. Her babies were safe, Henderson was gone, and a future opened up that no longer felt impossible. Belinda teased her gently about looking happier than she'd ever seen. Julia just smiled, not yet ready to share the whole unbelievable story. That evening, once the children were asleep and the apartment was quiet, she sat at the rickety kitchen table again. This time, she pored over the new contract instead of crumpled bills or job ads. The salary listed was nearly double her current wages, plus potential bonuses after the probation period. The hours were daytime shifts, 9 to 5 with a lunch break. Benefits included partial coverage for childcare costs. Her throat tightened at that last part. Bruce had thought of everything, it seemed, but her awe mingled with nerves. Could she handle the administrative workload? Could she truly learn spreadsheets, office software, communication systems? She recalled Bruce's calm assurance. Yes, if she put in the effort, he'd support her. She had never backed down from a challenge before, and this one might transform her entire life. She flipped through the final pages which outlined confidentiality clauses. She was expected to keep company secrets, any proprietary information she came across, strictly under wraps. That was standard. It also reminded her of the danger that had almost ensnared her. If Henderson had succeeded in forcing her to leak such info, she could have been liable for breach of contract. She shuddered, realizing how close she'd come to losing everything. By midnight, she had read it all twice. She signed her name at the bottom in a neat, careful script, heart pounding as she made it official. Then she texted Bruce a simple message. "I've signed the agreement. Thank you. See you tomorrow. Julia." She didn't expect a response at that late hour, but her phone vibrated minutes later. "BM. Pleased to hear it. Welcome aboard. Let's finalize details tomorrow morning at 9. Bruce." Her lips curved into a tired smile. She tucked the contract into its folder and set it beside her bag, ready for the next day. A wave of exhaustion and relief washed over her. Finally, life was on an upswing. Still, doubts niggled. She couldn't forget the complexity she'd seen in Bruce Montgomery's eyes, the strain of corporate battles and betrayals. What if more trouble surfaced down the line? Could she truly navigate the upper echelons of a company where boardroom machinations might put her at risk again? She forced herself to banish those fears for now. Henderson's threat was gone. Her children were safe, and she had a real chance to build a stable life. That was enough. She rose, checking on Carmen and Carlos one last time before bed. They slept soundly, arms wrapped around each other. In her bedroom, she sank onto the mattress. Unlike the nights before, there was no gnawing worry about tomorrow's rent or potential unemployment. She clung to the promise of a new day and a new position, letting that hope carry her into a restful sleep. But in the stillness of midnight, the majestic tower loomed somewhere in the city's skyline, its top floors lit by the glow of offices that never truly slept. High above, in his own private suite, Bruce Montgomery also sat awake, scrolling through a list of urgent emails and thinking of the battles yet to come. He closed his laptop, gazing out at the city. Despite the chaos of business deals and looming court battles with a rival firm, part of him felt lighter. He had done something good today. He had helped someone who deserved a break, and in turn gained an ally he strangely trusted. With a final sigh, he left his desk for his penthouse apartment on a separate floor, preparing for a restless sleep. Neither Julia nor Bruce knew exactly how their worlds would collide in the coming weeks, or how their fragile alliance might be tested by forces far more powerful than a disgruntled supervisor. But for the moment, they rested, bound by mutual relief and a tentative faith that this alliance, built under such tense circumstances, might stand stronger than either one suspected. In the early morning, sunlight filtered through the threadbare curtains of Julia's apartment, painting faint stripes across the walls. She woke with a jittery excitement in her stomach. Today was her first day under the new contract, the day she'd put away the mop for good and step into an administrative role in the Montgomery empire. She peered at the alarm clock by her bed, 6 a.m. Plenty of time. She rose quietly, not wanting to wake Carmen and Carlos, who were tangled in blankets on the adjacent mattress. Their small snores reminded her why she'd fought so hard. She tiptoed into the kitchen, flipping on the overhead light. A sense of calm resolve filled her. This was a fresh chapter, not just a different uniform. She filled the kettle for coffee, then checked her phone. A text from Belinda had arrived overnight. "I'm ready for the kiddos any time. Good luck on your first day, sweetie." Julia's heart warmed. At least childcare was no longer a frantic mystery. Belinda had come through with genuine kindness, and that was worth more than gold. After a quick shower, she chose the nicest outfit she owned, a plain blouse and a knee-length skirt. It felt strange not to wear her janitorial uniform, like stepping out of a role she'd lived in for years. She brushed out her hair and dabbed on a little makeup, hoping to look professional enough for an office environment. By 7, she'd gently woken the twins, feeding them cereal and helping them dress. Carmen was chipper, asking questions. "Will you see the nice man today, Mommy?" She meant Bruce Montgomery. Julia offered a smile. "Yes, I will," she said. "He's my boss now." Carlos grinned. "So, no more angry men?" Julia ruffled his hair. "No more angry men," she reassured, silently hoping that was true. Henderson was out, but the corporate world might have other hidden pitfalls. Still, she intended to face them with open eyes. Once the children were dressed, she herded them down the rickety stairwell and out onto the sidewalk. The sky was clear and bright, bustling city sounds already filling the air. They walked the few blocks to Belinda's building, where the older woman greeted them warmly at the door. "Go knock 'em dead, Julia," Belinda teased, ushering Carmen and Carlos inside. "The kids and I will be just fine. Maybe even do some coloring." The twins squealed, racing off to Belinda's living area, where crayons and coloring books lay on a low table. Julia kissed each child goodbye, chest tightening with the usual parental pang of separation, but it was tempered by excitement. Soon, she'd be doing work that could improve all their lives. She hurried to the bus stop next. The ride to the majestic tower was smoother than usual, her nerves dancing with each passing block. She arrived at 8:45, perfect timing for her 9 appointment with Bruce. Unlike previous days, she avoided the service entrance. She walked confidently through the main lobby, scanning her new ID badge at the security turnstile. A uniformed guard eyed her, then checked a computer screen. After a beat, he nodded. "You're on the approved list, Ms. Reyes. Have a good day." Ms. Reyes. It felt oddly dignified. She smiled in polite thanks and stepped toward the elevator banks. So this was her new life, recognized by security, welcomed rather than hustled around the edges. She took a standard elevator to the top floors, the polished metal doors closing behind her with a soft hiss. As she rode up, she tugged her blouse, wishing she had fancier clothes. The building was full of sharp-dressed executives. Hopefully Bruce wouldn't mind her modest attire. Ding. When she emerged, the reception area was different from the hush of private corridors she'd snuck through before. A stylish desk curved in front of glass partitions, where a poised assistant with immaculate hair typed away. The assistant glanced up, offering a professional smile. "Good morning. May I help you?" Julia's nerves fluttered. I'm supposed to meet Mr. Montgomery at 9? The assistant glanced at her screen. "You must be Ms. Reyes." She tapped a key. "Yes, he's expecting you. Please go right in." Julia released a breath of relief, then followed the short hallway to the large double doors. They slid open, revealing Bruce's familiar office. He stood near his desk, phone in hand, but he set it aside the moment he saw her. "Julia," he said, crossing toward her. Today he wore a navy suit that somehow looked both impeccably tailored and effortlessly comfortable. He extended a hand in greeting. "Welcome to your first day." She shook his hand, smiling gratefully. "Thank you, sir. It feels good to be here." He gestured to the seating area by the window, where they'd spoken the day before. and invited her to sit. As she eased onto the sofa, he stepped around to a nearby bar cart where a sleek coffee machine stood. "Coffee?" he asked. She blinked. "Oh, yes, please." Within moments, the smell of fresh espresso filled the air, and he handed her a small porcelain cup. It was a far cry from the cheap drip coffee she drank at home. She sipped carefully, savoring the rich taste. It was strange, sharing a morning coffee with the CEO in his private office. Once they both had their drinks, Bruce picked up a tablet from the coffee table, tapping through a few documents. "I've arranged for you to meet Nadia, one of our senior administrative coordinators. She'll mentor you for the first few weeks, helping you learn schedules, software, best practices." Julia exhaled, relieved. "That's wonderful. I'm eager to learn." He nodded, looking pleased. "Good. Since you'll be working near top-level executives, confidentiality is key. The HR forms you signed cover that, but I want to emphasize it personally. Our corporation has sensitive deals underway, and rumors could sabotage them." She remembered the fiasco with Henderson, how close she came to compromising those deals. She swallowed. "I understand. I won't breathe a word about anything I see or hear." He gave a curt nod of satisfaction. "Excellent. Also, if you ever feel overwhelmed, if tasks pile up or you face a situation like Henderson's again, come to me directly or to HR. I don't want a repeat of hidden threats." A wave of gratitude rose in her. "Thank you, Mr. Montgomery. You've already done so much." He waved it off with a gentle smile. "I prefer to think we're helping each other. Loyal employees are an asset." He set aside the tablet. "Shall we see your new workspace? It's not quite as grand as this office," he added wryly, "but it's comfortable." Julia stood, smoothing her skirt. Her heart pounded with anticipation. "Yes, please." He led her out of his office, back into the reception area. The stylish assistant gave a polite nod, and Julia managed a small smile in return. Bruce walked her around a corner to a set of glass walls, behind which lay a row of cubicles and offices for the administrative staff. The decor was modern, clean lines, frosted partitions, warm lighting, far more welcoming than the windowless janitorial breakroom she was used to. In the second cubicle from the end, Bruce paused. "We'll start you here. You have a computer terminal, some drawers for files. Nadia's station is right next to yours. She's not here yet, but she'll arrive soon." Julia peeked inside. There was a slim desk, an ergonomic chair, and a brand new workstation. The screen displayed a "Welcome Julia" background. She felt a lump in her throat. "It's beautiful," she whispered, laughing at herself. "I'm not used to an actual desk." He smiled. "Well, get comfortable. This will be your domain now." His phone buzzed in his pocket, and he glanced at it. "I have to take this call. Nadia should be here any minute. You can settle in, check your company email. The password's in that envelope on your desk." "Right." She nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. "Thank you again." He left with a final nod, phone pressed to his ear, disappearing around the corridor. Julia let out a breath. Alone in her new cubicle, she sank into the chair, running a hand over the smooth surface of the desk. She found the sealed envelope with her credentials, typed them into the login screen, and watched the system load. Her company inbox opened with a brief tutorial. There were welcome messages from HR, a note from someone named Nadia, her assigned mentor, saying she looked forward to meeting at 9:30. Another email came from an address labeled CorpCom, outlining the day's announcements. Julia scanned them, though half the corporate language felt foreign, but she was determined to learn. She clicked through the interface, exploring. After a few minutes, a presence appeared at the cubicle entrance. Julia turned to see a slim woman with a bright smile, curly black hair pinned into a neat bun. She wore a chic blazer and carried a tablet. "Hi," the woman said warmly. "I'm Nadia. You must be Julia." Julia stood, returning the smile. "That's me. Mr. Montgomery said you'd be my mentor." Nadia offered her hand. Yes, welcome to the team. Let's get you oriented. We'll start with a quick tour. Cafeteria, restrooms, supply closets, and then I'll walk you through scheduling software and email protocols. Julia felt immediate relief at Nadia's friendly tone. She followed her around, noting the layout: a shared break lounge with a small kitchen, color-coded supply drawers for stationery, a conference room for large staff meetings. It was so different from the hidden corners she'd cleaned as a janitor. Everyone they passed offered polite greetings, apparently recognizing Nadia and responding positively when introduced to Julia as the new administrative hire. By mid-morning, she was back in her cubicle, going over a training manual with Nadia. The software seemed complicated at first: calendars, meeting invites, resource bookings, but Nadia's patience helped. "Don't worry," she kept saying. "It's a lot to absorb on day one, but you'll pick it up." Julia found herself grinning. This was real. She was part of an office environment, not mopping floors. Her phone buzzed in her purse, startling her. She glanced at Nadia, who was explaining how to file expense reports, and Nadia nodded. "Go ahead, check it." Julia fished out her phone, expecting maybe a text from Belinda or Bruce. Instead, a jolt of discomfort shot through her. The screen displayed an unknown number. Her mind flashed to Henderson for a brief, terrifying moment. But Henderson was done, wasn't he? She excused herself politely from Nadia, stepping into the hallway. Heart pounding, she answered in a low voice. "Hello?" A distorted silence preceded a whispered sentence. "He may be gone, but the secrets remain." Her blood ran cold. "Who is this?" The line crackled. The voice, warped as if by a software filter, continued. "Don't trust your new boss. He hides bigger things than you imagine." Julia pressed herself against the corridor wall, trembling. I don't know what you mean." A hiss echoed, then a final statement before the call ended. "You saw what happened to Henderson. Don't be next." Click. The line went dead. Julia stared at the phone, a knot twisting in her stomach. Someone was threatening her again? She sagged, mind reeling. After all this progress, why now? Nadia poked her head around the corner, concern in her eyes. "Julia, everything okay?" Julia forced a tight smile, slipping the phone into her pocket. "It's fine," she lied, voice trembling. "Just a personal call." Nadia didn't push, but worry flickered on her face. "If you need a moment, go ahead," Julia exhaled, nodding. She walked slowly back to her desk, heart hammering. Her thoughts churned. Who would call her with such a cryptic warning? Was it someone who resented Bruce? Another disgruntled employee? A competitor? And how did they get her number? She remembered how Henderson had demanded she spy on Bruce, how he believed the CEO was hiding assets or forging secret deals. Could there be a grain of truth to those suspicions? She sank into her chair, eyes on the bustling office around her. She'd barely started this new job and already a new shadow had emerged. Should she tell Bruce? Or would that only stir more trouble, especially if the caller implied he was the one with secrets? Staring at her computer screen, she tried to focus on the training tasks Nadia had given. But her mind kept replaying that distorted voice. "Don't trust your new boss. You saw what happened to Henderson. Don't be next." Anxious tension built in her chest. She glanced at the clock. 10:15 a.m. Bruce was likely in some meeting or on a call. She considered sending him a text. But would that risk drawing attention from others? She chewed her lip, remembering his promise. "If you ever face a situation like Henderson's again, come to me." But was this situation the same? She didn't even know who was behind it or why. She might be overreacting to a crank call from someone disgruntled. Still, her gut told her not to dismiss it. She typed a quick email instead. Subject: Urgent personal inquiry to Bruce Montgomery. "Hi, Mr. Montgomery. Something unusual has come up. It's possibly another threat. Not sure what it means, but I'd like to speak with you when you have a free moment." Thank you, Julia. She hovered over the send button, hesitating. Could the unknown caller be monitoring her communications? That felt paranoid. Yet after Henderson's fiasco, she wasn't sure what to believe. Ultimately, she clicked send. Better to let Bruce know than stay silent. 10 minutes later, an email flashed in her inbox from Bruce. I'm tied up until noon. Can you come to my office at 12:15? We'll talk then. She nodded to herself, replying, Yes, I'll be there. A swirl of anxiety and relief warred in her stomach. At least she wouldn't be alone in figuring this out. Trying to refocus, she immersed herself in the training, forcing her mind to absorb the spreadsheets and scheduling tasks. Nadia hovered helpfully, answering questions and showing her shortcuts. The mundane clicking of keys and mild office chatter formed a calming background. And for a while, Julia almost forgot the eerie phone call. But the closer noon approached, the more her nerves rattled. She kept checking her phone, half expecting another cryptic message. None came. At 12:05, Nadia suggested they break for lunch, and Julia politely declined, claiming she had a quick errand. Her mentor didn't pry, so Julia headed to the 20th floor alone. In the executive reception area, the assistant recognized her immediately, buzzing her through. Julia paused at the tall doors, steadying herself, then stepped inside. Bruce was seated at his desk, a phone cradled between ear and shoulder. He gestured for her to wait a moment, finishing the call in low, clipped tones. As she approached, she took in his tense posture, the faint lines of stress on his forehead. Corporate life was never dull, she supposed. He ended the call, exhaling. Julia, thank you for coming. She offered a tentative smile. Thanks for seeing me. He nodded, rising from his chair. Let's talk more privately. He led her to the sitting area by the window once again. She noticed the city skyline beyond, bright under midday sun. Once they were both seated, he leaned forward, concern in his gaze. What's going on? Julia hesitated, then described the mysterious call. Someone with a distorted voice warned me not to trust you. Said I could be next if I wasn't careful. His jaw tightened. That's alarming. She clutched her hands in her lap. I'm sorry if it's just a prank, but the mention of Henderson and hidden secrets, maybe it ties into the corruption he was digging for? Bruce's expression darkened. He was silent for a moment, as though choosing his words carefully. I won't lie to you, Julia. There are high-stakes negotiations happening here, and not everyone is happy about them. Her pulse quickened. Negotiations for what? He exhaled. We're finalizing a merger with a rival firm, Seraphil Industries. It could reshape this entire sector. Billions of dollars, thousands of jobs. It's sensitive. Some investors oppose it and certain board members think it's too risky. He frowned. But the board gave me authority to proceed and I plan to push it through. That's ruffled feathers. She drew in a breath, recalling Henderson's claim that Bruce was hiding assets. So, are you hiding anything? Off-the-books deals? He looked offended for a split second, then softened. No, but the negotiations are private. If details leaked, share prices could be manipulated, or the entire deal could collapse. I suspect someone out there wants to sabotage me. Henderson was a small piece of that. Now, it seems someone else is trying to intimidate you, hoping you'll turn against me, or run. Julia's mind swirled. But why me? A wry twist of his mouth. Because they see you as vulnerable. You're new. You had that run-in with Henderson. Maybe they think you can be frightened into revealing internal info. Her heart sank. So, this might not be over? His gaze turned steely. I'll do everything I can to shield you, but we must be cautious. If you get any more calls or strange messages, record them. Let me know immediately. Julia nodded. And if they threaten my children? His tone hardened. They won't get that far, I promise. She felt a flicker of relief at his resolve, though fear still coiled in her gut. "So what do we do now?" "We proceed with caution," Bruce said. "You keep doing your job, learning the ropes. Don't let fear paralyze you. If the caller tries to contact you again, find out whatever you can, who they might be working with, what they want." She bit her lip. "And if they insist you're hiding something?" A shadow passed over his face. "Then we consider a more direct approach. But for now, trust me when I say I'm not engaged in illegal activities. I'm trying to grow this company in a competitive market." Julia studied him, wanting to believe. Despite the rumors, the cryptic calls, her gut told her Bruce was sincere. He could have easily discarded her after Henderson was fired, but instead, he'd given her a chance. That had to count for something. She exhaled slowly. "I'll be careful." A faint smile touched his lips. "Thank you. And Julia, if you feel uneasy, you can come here any time. We can also arrange security escorts." She shook her head. "I'll be all right for now, but thanks." He nodded, then stood, signaling the conversation's end. "Let's get back to work then. The rest of the day's fairly routine, meetings, admin tasks, etc. Keep me posted if anything else happens." She rose, smoothing her skirt. "I will. Thank you for hearing me out." Their eyes met, a strange current of mutual understanding passing between them. Then Julia turned and left the office, stepping out onto the top-floor corridor with shoulders squared. As she descended to her cubicle, her phone stayed silent. Whoever had called her had made their threat and vanished, for now. But the tension in the air felt tangible, like a storm gathering at the horizon. She clung to Bruce's reassurance, her new job responsibilities, and the thought of Carmen and Carlos waiting at home. Even if the unknown caller believed she was easily rattled, they were wrong. She was here to stay, lies or no lies, secrets or no secrets, and she would not be frightened away from the path she'd fought so hard to claim. The following week brought an onslaught of new tasks for Julia, testing her ability to transition from janitor to administrative assistant. Each day she arrived early and left late, throwing herself into every training module Nadia provided. She mastered the meeting scheduling software and helped coordinate small events for various departments. Although the constant learning was intense, she found satisfaction in each skill gained. Her cubicle became a small haven, a pinboard for sticky notes, a neat row of color-coded folders, and a photo of Carmen and Carlos smiling under an old oak tree. Every time she felt overwhelmed, she glanced at that picture and reminded herself why she had to keep pushing forward. Bruce Montgomery, for his part, oscillated between supportive and distant. Some mornings, he'd stop by her desk with a quick question or a nod of encouragement. Other times, he barely emerged from his office, locked in hours-long calls with Seraphil Industries or in closed-door meetings with the board. Julia understood that a billion-dollar merger came with punishing demands on his schedule, but she couldn't help noticing the growing strain etched into his face. Despite the busyness, one worry shadowed her steps: the mysterious phone call. Days passed without any further contact, and each silent hour made her both relieved and uneasy. Was the unknown caller biding their time, or had they abandoned their plan to scare her off? She couldn't decide which scenario felt more unsettling. Early on a Tuesday morning, Bruce summoned her to the 20th floor conference room for a planning session. Julia's heart fluttered with the usual mix of nerves and excitement. She was about to sit in on a real, high-level meeting. Nadia gave her a thumbs up as she left the cubicle, lugging a binder of schedules and a notebook for jotting minutes. When Julia arrived, she discovered Bruce wasn't alone. Seated at the long glass table were two men in dark suits, each reviewing documents with grim expressions. One had silver hair combed neatly back, his posture rigid. The other was younger, but wore the same severe aura. Their matching lapel pins bore the Seraphil Industries logo, a stylized S enclosed in a circle. Bruce looked up, beckoning her to close the door. "Julia, thanks for coming. Let's make this quick. You'll be taking notes for me?" She nodded, quietly sitting off to the side, notebook ready. The silver-haired man, introduced as Mr. Albrecht, Seraphile's lead negotiator, barely acknowledged her. The younger man, Mr. Tran, offered a curt nod. They resumed their discussion, volleying terms back and forth: share distribution, staffing transitions, intellectual property rights. Julia diligently recorded each point, though the corporate jargon blurred. She sensed tension radiating from the Seraphile men. They questioned Bruce's every detail with cold precision. He maintained his composure, but she caught glimpses of frustration tightening his jaw. "We're concerned," Albrecht said at one point, his voice clipped, "about the rumors of undisclosed holdings in this company. The board wants guarantees that no hidden debts or liabilities will surface after we sign." Bruce inhaled slowly. "We've been transparent. My CFO has provided all relevant statements. There's nothing hidden." Tran leaned forward. "What about that fiasco with your former supervisor? Henderson, was it? We heard he believed there were significant assets unaccounted for." Julia froze, recalling Henderson's blackmail and the cryptic call referencing secrets. Bruce's gaze flicked to her, then back to Tran. That was baseless. Henderson was disgruntled and acted alone. We have internal documents disproving his allegations. Albrecht exchanged a glance with Tran, then shrugged. "We'd like to see more thorough audits, just to be sure. In a merger of this scale, any surprise can topple the deal. Let's avoid that." Bruce, jaw clenched, replied, "Fine. I'll arrange an independent audit if that's what you need, but let's not allow rumors to derail progress." The conversation moved on, but the tension remained, thick and unyielding. Eventually, Mr. Albrecht checked his watch. "We'll revisit these points next week. Our legal team will be in contact." He rose, gathering papers. Tran followed suit. Bruce escorted them out, exchanging forced pleasantries. Julia stacked the notes and typed them into a concise meeting summary on her laptop, trying to ignore the knot in her stomach. Henderson's ghost still haunted these negotiations, apparently. And it wasn't just Henderson. Someone else had insinuated that Bruce was hiding something. When Bruce returned, his expression was stony. He closed the door and glanced at Julia, letting out a sharp breath. "So, you heard all that?" She nodded. "They're not entirely convinced about the absence of hidden assets." He rubbed his temples. "This is becoming a recurring theme. Henderson's nonsense sowed doubt in Seraphile's camp, and the board is watching every move. I need to finalize this merger, or the company could face a takeover from an even larger rival." Julia hesitated. "Could there be something fueling these rumors, though? You've insisted you're not hiding anything, but the calls, Henderson's accusations, where are they coming from?" His eyes clouded. "I suspect a competitor is feeding misinformation to Seraphile, hoping to sabotage the deal. Or a faction within my own board is stirring trouble, afraid I'm making a risky play." He sighed. "Either way, it's baseless. But rumor can be as destructive as fact." She swallowed. "Is there anything I can do to help?" A hint of appreciation flickered in his gaze. "For now, keep track of all meeting minutes, emails, anything that might prove our transparency. The board demands clarity, so every detail matters. If Seraphile requests an audit, you'll assist the finance team in organizing records." "I understand," Julia said, a surge of determination coursing through her. She wanted to prove her worth, to help the man who'd shown her mercy. "I'll do my best." He offered a faint smile. "Thank you." For the next few days, Julia worked side by side with Nadia and a rotating cast of accountants, compiling data to show Seraphile's negotiators. She scanned reams of old contracts, digitized historical balance sheets, and meticulously filed them in secure drives. The workload was staggering, but she found a strange satisfaction in forging order from chaos. Meanwhile, Bruce juggled non-stop calls and business dinners, sometimes leaving the office well past midnight. On one rare break, he passed by her cubicle, noticing her bleary eyes. "You should go home," he said gently. "It's after 9. She stiffened, realizing how late it was. "I'm just finishing these reports. Carmen and Carlos are with Belinda tonight, so I can focus." His gaze softened at the mention of her children. "Thank you for pushing so hard, but don't burn yourself out. I want employees who last, not ones who collapse." She offered a tired smile. "Duly noted. I'll wrap up soon." The synergy of their efforts seemed to pay off. Initially, at least. Seraphile's negotiating team softened once they saw the thoroughness of the documents. Albrecht and Tron began to make fewer pointed remarks about hidden liabilities. It felt like the tide was turning in Bruce's favor. That optimistic bubble burst on a Thursday morning. Julia arrived at the tower to find an unusual hush blanketing the top floors. People moved in tense clusters, whispering. She slid into her cubicle, exchanging a worried look with Nadia. "What's happening?" Nadia grimaced. An anonymous tip got leaked to the press. Something about Montgomery's secret slush fund. Allegations that he's siphoned money from corporate accounts to an offshore entity. The news outlets are swirling. Julia's stomach dropped. "But that's not true, right?" Nadia shook her head. "I highly doubt it, but rumors can set off investigations, freeze negotiations. Seraphile might panic and back out." She lowered her voice. "Bruce is furious and cornered. He's in an emergency board meeting right now." Julia's thoughts spun. The same rumors again. Hidden assets, fraudulent funds. She remembered the phone call warning her not to trust the boss, claiming bigger secrets lurked. Could that unknown caller have orchestrated this leak? Or was it a competitor feeding the press? An email pinged in her inbox. Subject, emergency staff briefing at 11 a.m. She clicked it, seeing Bruce's name as the sender. He wanted all administrative personnel in the large conference room. No further details given. At 10:50, she joined the throng heading to the designated space. Over 20 staff members packed the glass-walled room. Bruce arrived last, stepping in with a brisk stride. His expression was grim, tie slightly askew. He surveyed the employees, meeting each gaze in turn. "Thank you for coming," he said, voice resonating with steeled determination. "I assume most of you have heard about the allegations in the media. Claims that I've been funneling corporate money to an offshore account. Let me state clearly, these accusations are false. We suspect sabotage from outside, someone feeding misinformation to manipulate the merger negotiations." A murmur of concern rippled through the room. Julia swallowed, nerves tense, but she hung on his every word. Bruce continued, "Seraphile's leadership is alarmed. They're threatening to delay final signing until we disprove these rumors. Meanwhile, our board is demanding an immediate internal investigation, which I welcome. I have nothing to hide." His gaze sharpened. "However, until the investigation concludes, we face scrutiny and potential legal complications. I need each of you to remain calm, continue your duties, and cooperate fully if HR or our legal team requests data." One employee raised a hand. "Mr. Montgomery, do we know who leaked this story?" Bruce's jaw tightened. "Not yet. Our IT department is analyzing network logs for any sign of infiltration. For now, we proceed as usual, though we'll heighten security measures. If you see or hear anything suspicious, report it immediately." He ended the briefing swiftly, urging everyone to stay focused. As the group dispersed, Julia lingered near the door, heart pounding. So the rumor had escalated to a media scandal, exactly the kind of sabotage Bruce feared. If the board demanded an internal investigation, she might be pulled in to show the documents she'd helped compile. After the meeting, she returned to her cubicle, hands trembling slightly as she keyed in a password for the next batch of files. She sensed eyes on her, some curious co-worker noticing her unsettled expression. She forced composure, rummaging through the tasks Nadia had assigned. But her phone, hidden in her purse, felt like a magnet. Was the caller behind this leak, or merely part of a bigger plot? The memory of that filtered voice replayed in her mind, stoking dread. Don't trust your new boss. He may be gone, but the secrets remain. Julia inhaled deeply. She had to trust her instincts, and right now they told her that Bruce was being targeted by unseen forces, maybe more powerful adversaries than Henderson. She resolved to keep her eyes open, and if anyone tried to manipulate her again, she'd be ready. At least she hoped so, because something told her the worst was yet to come. 3 days after the scandal broke, the majestic tower was awash in a tense hush. News outlets continued to speculate on the rumored offshore account, and social media was full of conspiracy theories about Montgomery's secret deals. Julia tried to keep her head down, focusing on data requests from the internal investigation. She spent hours pulling records for the auditors, verifying spreadsheets, and responding to queries. Each day ended in exhaustion, but still, she pressed on. Meanwhile, Bruce's demeanor shifted from steady determination to something quieter, more guarded. He no longer paused at her cubicle to chat. Instead, he hurried between closed-door meetings with lawyers and the board. Nadia whispered that if the offshore rumor wasn't disproven soon, Serafil would walk away from the merger. That would cost the company millions and might force cuts or layoffs. Despite the long hours and looming threats, no further strange calls came to Julia's phone. She tried to convince herself that the saboteur's intimidation was over. But an uneasy feeling lingered in her gut, especially after glimpsing the stress in Bruce's eyes. Whatever hidden forces worked against him, they weren't done. On Friday afternoon, a sudden directive summoned Julia to a new conference room on the 21st floor, an area even more exclusive than Bruce's suite. She'd never been up there. The elevator required a special card scan, and a security guard led her through an unmarked door. Her pulse thudded with nerves. Was she in trouble? Inside, a stern-faced HR representative greeted her. 2 auditors sat at a long table, laptops open. Bruce was also there, along with a pair of board members, an older woman wearing a tailored gray suit and a middle-aged man with shrewd eyes behind thin glasses. They all looked up as Julia entered, tension heavy in the air. "Ms. Reyes," said the HR rep, "we need to clarify your role in the retrieval of documents. Please, have a seat." Julia gingerly perched on a chair. Bruce gave her a quick nod as if to say, "Don't worry." But the board members' expressions were grave. One of the auditors turned his laptop around. "We've reviewed the digital footprints associated with your login," he said in a neutral tone. "You accessed a large volume of historical financial records. Can you explain why?" Julia's stomach twisted. "I was helping compile data for Serafil's negotiations and later for the internal investigation. Nadia assigned me to scan and organize older contracts plus balance sheets from the last decade, that's all." "Did anyone instruct you to delete or alter any files?" asked the older woman, her voice clipped. Julia shook her head emphatically. "No, I kept everything intact." The auditors exchanged glances. One typed notes while the other said, "We found no anomalies in your activity. However, we must ask, did you ever come across references to an offshore account in these documents?" She hesitated, recalling lines of data she'd skimmed. "No, I saw nothing like that. Only standard financial statements. There were foreign holdings, but those appeared in official ledgers. Nothing hidden." Bruce cleared his throat. "Ms. Reyes has been extremely thorough and transparent. If there was an offshore account, I assure you it's not in our official files, because it doesn't exist." The younger board member's gaze flicked between Bruce and Julia. "We're aware Ms. Reyes was nearly blackmailed by a former supervisor. Could she have been coerced into forging or destroying evidence?" Julia's heart pounded. She opened her mouth to protest, but Bruce spoke first. "Absolutely not. I've already provided statements from security confirming that Henderson was the one blackmailing her, not the other way around." She stood against him. "She's here because she's trustworthy, not because she's part of any cover-up." Silence thickened. Then the HR rep nodded to Julia. "Thank you for clarifying. That's all for now. We may call you back if we have more questions." Julia stood shakily, bowing her head to the group. Bruce gave her a faint, supportive smile that said, "Hang in there." She left the room with a mix of relief and fear. At least the auditors knew she'd done nothing wrong, but the tension was stifling. It felt like the entire company was on trial. Back at her desk, she tried to resume tasks, but the minutes dragged. Nadia gave her sympathetic looks, offering coffee and gentle reassurances. Yet every new email or phone call made Julia jumpy. Around 4 p.m., an unexpected meeting invite popped onto her screen. Sender, Mr. Bruce Montgomery. Subject, urgent, private discussion, 4:15 p.m. Location, CEO's office. Her throat tightened. She grabbed her notepad, braced herself, and hurried to the top floor. Bruce was pacing near his desk when she arrived, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up. The city skyline behind him shimmered in afternoon light. "Julia, come in," he said, voice weary. "Close the door." She did so, stepping toward the sitting area. He followed, gesturing for her to sit. The lines on his face looked deeper than ever. "What's going on?" she asked softly. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "The board is rattled. The internal audit isn't enough to dispel the rumors. Seraphil's top executives want additional proof that there's no hidden slush fund." Julia frowned. "But how can we prove a negative? If there's no account, there's no paper trail." "Exactly. It's nearly impossible to satisfy them unless we find the source of these accusations and debunk them outright." His gaze hardened. "And that's where I need your help once again." Her stomach fluttered. "Anything." He tapped his phone, opening a message. "Over the past month, I've noticed suspicious activity in our data logs. A certain department has been pulling records at odd hours, some in restricted areas, beyond what normal staff do. IT traced part of it to a proxy server, masking an inside user." Julia's pulse quickened. "You think someone here is fueling those offshore rumors?" "Yes," he said grimly. "An insider is tampering with our files or feeding them to the media. We suspect they inserted references to a fake offshore account in some older documents, then leaked those to reporters. If so, those doctored files might still be stored on a hidden drive." Her mind reeled. "Why me, though? Shouldn't the IT team handle it?" He offered a small, tense smile. "They're on it, but they can't parse the layers of older corporate archives as quickly as you can. You've already gone through much of our historical data. I want you to do a deeper search, look for anomalies. If there's even a single clue, we need to find it." Julia's hands shook slightly. She recalled how she'd told the board there was nothing suspicious in her scanning. But if new files had been planted or manipulated after she first looked, that could explain the rumor's sudden rise. She swallowed. "I'll do whatever it takes, but this might paint a target on my back." Bruce's expression softened. "I know, but we'll keep this between us. I'll arrange an off-site backup for you to examine so no one sees your activity on the internal network. You'll do most of the work from a secure laptop I'll give you at times you choose." His protective approach eased her fear. "All right, I'll start tonight if needed. But what about my children?" He nodded. "We'll work around your schedule. You can do it from home after they're asleep, or in a private room here if that's easier. Take precautions. Tell no one, not even Nadia." Julia swallowed, realizing the gravity of what he was asking. She'd be investigating potential corporate sabotage, alone, outside normal channels. "I'll do it," she repeated. "If it helps clear your name, and the company's, then yes." He exhaled with relief, handing her a small flash drive. "Here's the first set of archives, scanned copies from the finance department. We suspect the tampering started here. Compare them to the originals we have on file from last month. Those are on a secure server. I'll email you the login info." She accepted the drive, chest tight with both excitement and dread. "Understood. I'll be careful." He gave a determined nod. Thank you, Julia. If we can pinpoint the forgery, Seraphil's team will have undeniable proof we're victims of sabotage, not perpetrators of fraud. They parted. Julia hurried back to her cubicle, the flash drive feeling hot in her hand, as if it carried the entire fate of the merger. Nadia, catching the tension in Julia's face, frowned. Everything okay? Julia mustered a vague smile. Just extra work. She hoped Nadia wouldn't press for details. That night, she put Carmen and Carlos to bed early, promising them a weekend outing if everything went well at work. Once the apartment was quiet, she set up the secure laptop Bruce had provided, heart pounding in her ears. She inserted the flash drive, navigating a labyrinth of scanned financial documents, columns of figures, bank statements, contract lines. The hours ticked by. Her eyes blurred. She cross-checked random entries with older backups. At first, it all matched, but near midnight she noticed something off in a single PDF, a deposit date that didn't align with the original log. She magnified it. Sure enough, the reference to an overseas bank was inserted in a font slightly different from the rest. It was subtle, but not invisible if you knew what to look for. A jolt of adrenaline surged. She noted the file name Q4 Expenditures, 2017 Final.pdf. The forgery claimed an account in the Caymans, a deposit that never actually happened. She rummaged through the older versions Bruce had given her and confirmed that line didn't exist in the authentic doc. Bingo. So the rumors were built on doctored lines, planted to suggest an offshore flow of money. She quickly gathered screenshots, wrote a short report, and emailed it to Bruce's private account with the subject, "Found something." At 1:30 a.m. her phone buzzed. A new email from Bruce. "Great catch, Julia. This is exactly what we needed. Forwarding to legal. Call me in the morning." She let out a shaky laugh, relief coursing through her. They finally had proof that someone faked these references. Tomorrow, Bruce could show Seraphil and the board that the alleged offshore account was a fabrication. The saboteur's scheme might finally unravel. Yet as she closed the laptop, a chill swept over her. Someone in the company had gone to great lengths to slip that line into official archives, someone with enough skill to mimic old records. They'd likely not stop just because one forgery got exposed. She double-checked her door locks, heart hammering. The next day brought a flurry of triumphant progress. Bruce presented Julia's findings to a stunned board, along with the digital footprints from IT. Seraphil's negotiators, upon hearing the news, relaxed their posture, realizing the rumored account was fake. By week's end, the final contract was back on track. The corporate world sighed with relief. In a private moment, Bruce thanked Julia personally. "You saved this deal," he said, voice earnest. "I can't thank you enough." She smiled, though her eyes were tired. "I'm just glad I could help, and I'm relieved you aren't the villain in some drama." He huffed a soft laugh. "Me too." Then, more seriously, "We're still investigating the saboteur. Once we find them, they'll face charges. If you see any sign of them again, let me know." Julia nodded. She recalled the mysterious caller's warning, but felt no fear now. The truth had emerged, and she'd stood on the side of honesty. Henderson was gone, the forgeries exposed. Her children were safe. She had a stable position with a promising future. 2 weeks later, the merger formally closed. The building buzzed with celebration. On the top floor, Bruce signed the final documents alongside Seraphil's team, cameras flashing. Julia lingered behind the scenes, proud that her small part of detective work helped make it possible. That evening, the majestic tower lit up with a special display in the lobby, congratulating Montgomery Corporation and Seraphil on their new alliance. Julia passed through with a smile, heading home to share the good news with Carmen and Carlos. She no longer had to fear Henderson or crippling job insecurity, and while the threat of hidden enemies remained in any big corporation, she felt ready to face it, especially with Bruce's trust and her own growing confidence. Outside, the city's lights twinkled. She gazed up at the tower, remembering her first day as a frightened janitor, clutching a mop. Everything had changed since then, her title, her responsibilities, her sense of self-worth. She turned and walked away, the night air cool on her cheeks. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but she knew now that with integrity, courage, and the right allies, even the greatest obstacles could be overcome. If you enjoyed this story, don't miss the next one. Just click on the screen.